Chapter 1708. Originally, Cho Wu had planned on opening a gap on his side first, then going to help the others. That way, they could slowly nibble away at the enemies one by one. This was the Jade Conch Galaxy, and as the realm lord of the Jade Conch Galaxy, he had a responsibility. Even if he had to suffer serious injuries or even die in battle, he had to stop the enemy's plan. Thus, before the battle began, he had already planned on sacrificing himself for a noble cause. However, before he could do anything, Ma Shangxi had already succeeded. In just a few dozen breaths, he'd killed 2 late-stage Moon Yao cultivators. Cho Wu hurriedly transmitted his voice. "Everyone, stay calm and wait for fellow Taoist Ma's help." The gap had already been opened, so there was no need to be impatient. Although he was old, if he could live, who would be willing to die? As soon as he finished speaking, Ma Shangxi's sea of blood began to move, enveloping another part of the battlefield. Both sides fighting on this battlefield were late-stage Moon Yao cultivators. This was also Ma Shangxi's deliberate choice. If he wanted to quickly deal with the enemy, he naturally had to focus on the stronger ones. As long as he killed a few of the stronger ones, the remaining ones wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. Seeing the sea of blood move over, the late-stage Moon Yao cultivator of the Filth tribe clearly wanted to escape. However, the late-stage Moon Yao cultivator of the Jade Conch Galaxy naturally wouldn't allow that to happen. He frantically tried to stop and intercept the enemy. For a time, the Filth tribe cultivator couldn't do anything. He could only watch as the battlefield he was in was enveloped by the sea of blood. "Holy Sovereign, this guy has intelligence." Ma Shangxi immediately reported to Lu Yi when he saw the enemy's reaction. "Kill him." Lu Ye's expression was calm. If this Moon Yao cultivator had intelligence, then he was a true Filth tribe cultivator, not a lowly servant. As long as he was dealt with, the situation here would be more or less stabilized. "Holy Sovereign, I'll create an opportunity for you." Ma Shangxi had a loyal and devoted look on his face because he discovered that his cooperation with Lu Yi was simply flawless. He didn't know what technique Lu Yi had used to tear open the enemy's wounds, but that technique and his blood-tracing technique were a match made in heaven. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be easy to kill a late-stage Moon Yao cultivator. He'd have to beat them to the point of death. However, he and Lu Ye's cooperation didn't need to go through that much trouble. All they had to do was cut a few wounds and activate the blood-tracing technique. Their enemies in the sea of blood were at their mercy. It could be said that the risk was infinitely reduced. After a short while, another late-stage Moon Jade's aura was annihilated in the blood sea. Ma Shangxi's blood sea teleportation had arrived, and the other party had not been able to escape in time. His fate was already sealed, and there was no doubt about it. After all, Yu Yao alone was enough to cause him a lot of trouble. Now that Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi were working together, unless Ri Zhao personally intervened, Yu Yao wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Ma Shangxi's sea of blood started to move again. Wherever it passed, large swathes of living beings would perish. Soon, it arrived at another battlefield belonging to Yu Yao. If the situation continued to develop like this, it wouldn't be long before the invading enemies would be defeated one by one. However, at this moment, Ma Shangxi suddenly exclaimed, "My lord, there's movement from the insect path." "Let me take a look," Lu Yi hurriedly said. Within the blood sea, apart from the caster, anyone else who entered would be affected. This included their 5 senses and divine consciousness. Of course, Lu Yi could also activate the blood sea technique and merge it with Ma Shangxi's blood sea. That way, he wouldn't be affected by this restriction. However, if he really did that, it would disperse his power. Moreover, he had to constantly activate the Holy Convergence technique. Otherwise, Ma Shangxi would be suppressed by the Holy Convergence technique. Therefore, Lu Yi hadn't activated the Blood Sea technique. Within the Blood Sea, Ma Shangxi was the absolute leader. Lu Yi wanted to investigate the situation on the insect path, so he needed Ma Shangxi's cooperation. In the next instant, with Ma Shangxi's help, Lu Ye's divine consciousness spread out toward the insect path. Sure enough, there was movement on the insect path. Lu Yi could already sense Yu Yao's aura from it. The enemy has reinforcements. Lu Yi immediately came to this conclusion. It was obvious that the filth tribe on the other side of the insect path had sensed that something was amiss and had sent reinforcements. Moreover, based on the movement, they should be arriving soon. Go over there and block the insect path, Lu Yi immediately ordered. The situation here had been resolved with great difficulty. If the enemy really sent more Yu Yao, then all of their efforts would have been for naught. The filth tribe had a strong foundation. If reinforcements really came, there would definitely be more than just Yu Yao. Ma Shangxi also knew that the situation was urgent. She urged the blood sea and pounced toward the insect path. At the same time, Lu Yi condensed his own precious blood. With a flick of his finger, 5 figures appeared and rushed out of the blood sea. He now had 5 drops of precious blood. This time, he could be said to have used all of his strength. The blood sea's speed was extremely fast, destroying everything in its path. When it rushed to the insect path, a huge figure just happened to appear. This figure was about 100 feet tall. Apart from the unknown beast's skin tied around his waist that covered his vital parts, the rest of his body was exposed. He carried a huge mace on his shoulder, looking awe-inspiring. The aura on his body was also extremely violent. It was at the peak of Yu Yao's strength. The filth tribe had clearly sent an incredible guy over. Lu Yi recognized that this was a member of the giant tribe. Although they were rare in the universe, they were not rare either. They were born with boundless strength and terrifying physiques. They looked clumsy, but in reality, they were extremely difficult to deal with. In the insect path behind the filth tribe giant, Yu Yao's aura was faintly discernible. Clearly, more reinforcements were about to arrive. End this quickly, Lu Yi ordered. Ma Shangxi also knew that he had to fight with all his might. Otherwise, if the enemy's reinforcements really rushed over, the situation here would instantly collapse. He immediately shrunk the blood sea, enveloping the insect path and the filth tribe giant within it. Although the blood sea had shrunk by more than half, its might became even more violent. The filth tribe giant that walked out of the insect path didn't even see the situation clearly before he was faced with an overwhelming wave of blood arts. He disdainfully raised his head and roared, "Mere blood arts dare to offend the might of the filth tribe? Hurry up and submit." Dense magic power surged, blocking all the blood arts outside. At the same time, he waved the huge mace in his hand, stirring the blood sea. In an instant, the blood sea surged. At the same time, his own filthy power spread wildly, corroding the surroundings. However, before he could act presumptuously for long, Ma Shangxi's angry roar rang out. "What nonsense are you bragging about? With me here, you can talk after you've survived." Although Ma Shangxi was submissive in front of Lu Yi, he was still a peak Yu Yao. Even in the blood tribe, he had a certain status. If the other party was Rizhao, Ma Shangxi definitely wouldn't dare to say anything. However, he was also a Yu Yao, so how could he allow someone to be so arrogant in front of him? As soon as he finished speaking, the blood light on his body condensed and expanded, turning into a figure that was about the same size as the filth tribe giant. At the same time, he borrowed the power of the blood sea to condense a blood-colored staff in his hand. The two huge figures immediately engaged in a fierce battle at the exit of the insect path. Lu Yi used the blood sea as cover and activated concealment at the same time, trying his best to conceal his existence as he searched for an opportunity to attack. On the other side, 3 of the 5 treasured blood clones that he sent out formed a simple tripartite formation and charged toward the nearest battlefield. The other 2 treasured blood clones headed in another direction. It was actually very difficult for cultivators who cultivated to the Yu Yao realm to form a formation. At most, they could only join hands to resist the enemy, unless they used the twin chi-linked branches formation disc. However, even though Lu Yi had modified the twin spirit connecting formation disc, it was only suitable for star constellations. It wasn't suitable for Yu Yao. This was because Yu Yao's movements were too large and the formation disc was a restriction. Ordinary Yu Yao naturally couldn't form a formation, but Lu Ye's treasured blood clones didn't have to worry about this at all. They were clones that originated from the same source, so there was no difference in their chi, dermic powers, chi, and blood. It was simply too easy for them to form a formation. There was only one thing. Although the treasured blood clones could display Lu Ye's full strength, they didn't have the Panshan saber in their hands, and they didn't have the talent tree. Therefore, in theory, the methods that the treasured blood clones could use were limited. Moreover, the energy of the treasured blood clones was limited, so they couldn't fight for too long. Otherwise, when their energy was exhausted, the treasured blood clones would dissipate, and Lu Yi would have to spend time to reform them. Even so, when the 3 treasured blood clones formed a formation, they helped Yu Yao gain a huge advantage on the battlefield. The treasured blood clones weren't afraid of death, and under the formation, they bore a lot of pressure. Seeing this, Yu Yao desperately urged her dermic powers and quickly gained the upper hand. In addition to Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's previous efforts, Yu Yao had an absolute advantage on the battlefield. As long as they had enough time, killing the other party wouldn't be a problem. The battle here was in full swing, and the exit of the worm passage was also locked in a fierce battle. Lu Ye's other 2 treasured blood clones had already arrived at a certain location. Without Yu Yao's interference, only a few constellations and spirit seas could stop the 2 treasured blood clones. There was a strange thing standing there. It was shaped like a pagoda with 13 floors. Rich, filthy power flowed inside and out. Lu Yi sensed that this thing had some vague connection with the worm passage. There was more than one such thing. There were as many as 8 such things surrounding the worm passage. Earlier, when he rushed here, Yu Yao had said that after the filthy people occupied this area, they had been arranging something. It seemed that they had the intention of stabilizing the worm passage and allowing Rizhao to come here. These tower-shaped things were obviously the arrangement of the filthy people. Lu Yi had planned to study this thing after the end of the battle, but now that the other party had sent reinforcements across the worm passage, he couldn't delay any longer. No matter what this thing was, there was no doubt that it was used to stabilize the worm passage. Therefore, he had to destroy it. Lu Yi keenly discovered a problem. With the arrival of the filthy giant, the worm passage shook a little. End of chapter. Chapter 1709. The filth race conquered everywhere and came and went without a trace. They relied on their starry sky supreme treasure, the heavenly frost mirror. This treasure could release heavenly frost chi at a random location in the starry sky to freeze and shatter space, then create a passageway. However, this passageway created by the heavenly frost chi was basically unstable. At most, it could only support the passage of the Yu Jade realm, and there was a certain amount of risk involved. Therefore, the filth race's method of conquering was to first send a portion of Yu Yao to stabilize the situation at the exit of the passageway and occupy the terrain. Then they would use some methods to stabilize the passageway. Once the passageway was stable enough to allow Rizhao to pass through, the overall situation would be decided. This was also the reason why the filth race had the upper hand in the beginning, but they still hid in the filthy area and didn't chase after them. They didn't know which star system they were in and whether Rizhao was there or not. To be safe, they naturally had to guard the insect path and set up a method to stabilize it. Lu Yi was actually a little confused because although the filth race had deployed a large number of Yu Yao here, a dozen Yu Yao was definitely not a lot. Even though Ma Shangxi had said that the filth race had opened up more than one battlefield in space, and that they only needed to deal with a small portion of the filth race's forces, the filth race was so large that they could easily send out a few dozen Yu Yaos, let alone a few hundred. It was not until the filth giant arrived that Lu Yi understood the crux of the matter. It was because of the passageway. He keenly sensed that with the arrival of the filth giant, the passageway was clearly shaken. As a result, the passageway's stability was affected and became more chaotic than before. In other words, although the passageway opened up by the heavenly frost mirror could allow Yu Yao to pass through, the passageway's stability would be affected every time a Yu Yao passed through. Therefore, the filth race only sent a dozen Yu Yao at first. It was not that they did not want to send more Yu Yao, but they could not. This was probably a number set based on the foundation of the Jade Conch cultivators. In the filth race's view, the dozen or so Yu Yao who arrived first were enough to protect the passageway with their geographical advantage. As long as they set up a method to stabilize the passageway, they could let Rizhao come through the passageway and Jade Conch would not be able to resist. There was no problem with the filth race's plan. If Lu Yi had not coincidentally encountered this battle, with Jade Conk's current foundation, it would indeed be a crisis. But it just so happened that Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi were guests in Yuluo, so they rushed here together. At this moment, Yu Yao of the Filth race had suffered heavy losses on the battlefield. If they didn't receive any reinforcements soon, then all of their previous preparations and efforts would be for naught. That was why the filthy giant had come. Not only had he come, but the other Yu Yao were also traveling through the worm path. They would most likely arrive soon. After this battle, the filthy race should have understood the situation on Jade Conk's side. They should have seen through the awkwardness of Jade Conk's lack of sunlight. This was because if the Jade Conk star system had sunlight, then it would have already arrived. However, only Yu Yao had participated in the battle so far, which was enough to prove that the Jade Conk star system wasn't a powerful galaxy. This was the best target for the filth race, so they immediately sent reinforcements. The two doppelgangers walked in front of the filthy pagoda and raised their hands to destroy it. Although this thing was set up by the filthy race, it was not strong, so it was not difficult to destroy. As the filthy pagoda shattered, Lu Yi clearly sensed the insect path trembling again. He immediately realized that he had made the right choice. If these pagodas were destroyed, it would definitely greatly affect the filth race's next plan. The two doppelgangers immediately split up and took action. On the other side, at the exit of the insect path, the filthy giant and Ma Shangxi were fighting fiercely. On the surface, it seemed like they were almost evenly matched, but in fact, Ma Shangxi was under a lot of pressure. It was not that he was weaker than the other party, but the filthy power was constantly polluting his blood sea and magic power. It was not a problem for him to fight with the other party for a short time, but as time passed, the power he could use would inevitably weaken. On the other hand, the filthy giant was not affected by the filthy power at all. Instead, he was like a fish in water. Fortunately, there was still Lu Yi. The master and servant had worked together to kill a few Yu Yao before. Although this was the first time they had worked together, their cooperation was very skillful. While the filthy giant was entangled by Ma Shangxi, Lu Yi had already activated his technique. His figure floated back and forth like a ghost, and saber lights flashed continuously. The filthy giant roared angrily, and huge wounds appeared on his body one after another. Lu Yi felt more and more how powerful the mountain pan saber was. Although the giant race's physique was not as tough as the stone races, in terms of physique strength alone, it was enough to rank in the top 10 races in the universe. They were born with rough skin and thick flesh, and this time, the one who came from the insect path was a peak Yu Yao. Even if ordinary weapons slashed at him, they might not be able to pose much of a threat. The mountain pan saber could. It was incomparably sharp, and with Lu Ye's divine edge spirit tattoo, as long as the enemy's cultivation was not enough, the mountain pan saber could break through the defenses of the body. Flesh and blood rolled around the wounds, and it looked terrible. However, in reality, such injuries were only superficial wounds for a peak Yu Yao, let alone a peak Yu Yao. However, the filthy giant clearly felt that something was wrong. This was because the wounds that should have been able to heal quickly were healing extremely slowly. Moreover, there seemed to be an extremely strange power lingering around the wounds. It was this power that was preventing the wounds from healing. The filthy giant roared again and again. When he was fighting with Ma Shangxi, he wanted to find a chance to get rid of Lu Yi because he realized that this jumping human was a problem. However, the leaping technique he inherited from Yen Shi was very ghostly. Lu Yi was basically in a state where he would leave after one slash, and with Ma Shangxi's blood sea covering his tracks, he did not give the filthy giant any chance to attack. After another fierce clash, Ma Shangxi retreated and looked at the filthy giant coldly. Meeting his gaze, the filthy giant's heart skipped a beat as he realized that something was wrong. He had also fought against the blood race before, so he naturally knew how disadvantageous it was for him to face a blood race with his current wounded state. Without any hesitation, the filthy giant pounced at Ma Shangxi. Ma Shangxi sneered and allowed the huge spiked club to smash into his body. His entire body seemed to have been shattered, turning into a mass of blood energy that merged into the blood sea. But in the next moment, The filthy giant's expression changed because the wounds on his body were suddenly torn open by an invisible force and became even larger. The blood that he had deliberately controlled to not flow too much was now gushing out. He knew that this was the blood race's blood tracing technique. Under normal circumstances, this blood art wouldn't be of much use against the cultivators above the constellations. This was because the cultivators above the constellations all had powerful physiques and methods to quickly recover. Without any wounds, the blood guide art wouldn't be able to work. However, the wounds caused by the mountain blade were not so easy to heal. Coupled with the blood tracing technique used by Ma Shangxi, who was at the peak of Yu Yao, even the filthy giant could not resist. Feeling his blood flowing wildly, the filthy giant panicked. He ran back and forth for a while to search for the enemy, but in the end, not only did he not see Ma Shangxi's figure, he also could not find Lu Ye's figure. This was the disgusting part of fighting against the blood race in the Blood Sea. The blood race could advance and retreat freely in the Blood Sea. Unless one had an overwhelming advantage, it was very difficult to fight against the blood race. If it was under normal circumstances, the filthy giant could escape from here and look for another opportunity. However, he had rushed over from the insect path, so his greatest responsibility was to guard the exit of the insect path. He was basically nailed to the ground here, so how could he escape? "Get out here!" he roared as his magic power surged. He waved the wolf-tooth club in his hand and stirred up the blood sea. Ma Shangxi did not show up at all, allowing the filthy giant to do as he pleased in the blood sea. It could even be said that this was something he wanted to see because the more the filthy giant struggled, the more powerful his blood tracing technique would be. Lu Yi also hid somewhere in the blood sea, coldly looking at the filthy giant's sorry figure. Moments later, Ma Shangxi suddenly cried out in alarm, "Not good, another Yu Yao is coming from the insect path." Moreover, judging from the aura, it was an existence not inferior to the filthy giant. Working together with Lu Yi to deal with the filthy giant, Ma Shangxi did not feel any pressure at all. He had already gained the upper hand. Now, all he needed to do was hide in the blood sea and continuously use the blood tracing technique. Under the guidance of the blood tracing technique, once the filthy giant's blood ran dry, he would die without a doubt. However, if another enemy similar to the filthy giant appeared, Ma Shangxi was not confident. Especially as time passed, he would be affected more and more by the filthy power. Thinking about it, Ma Shangxi made a decision, "Lord, I'll go kill him." In this situation, only by killing the filthy giant would he be able to deal with the next enemy with all his strength. "Don't panic," Lu Yi calmly replied. At this time, it was very dangerous to forcefully kill the filthy giant. The other party had already sensed that something was wrong. It was fine if he and Ma Shangxi hid, but once they showed up, they would definitely be attacked with all their strength. Now that they were facing the filthy giant, the victory was already decided, so there was no need to take unnecessary risks. But Ma Shangxi still had doubts, but he soon understood why Lu Yi was so calm. It was because powerful auras suddenly rushed into the blood sea from all directions, rushing toward the insect path's location. It was the Yu Yao of Jade Conch and Lu Ye's 5 treasured blood clones. Previously, Ma Shangxi had been fighting the filthy giant and then focused on using the blood tracing technique, so he did not have much awareness of the situation outside. It was only now that he realized that the Yu Yao of Jade Conch had killed all their opponents, and the filthy giant had all been killed. End of chapter. Chapter 1710. Seeing Lu Ye's precious blood clones, Ma Shangxi knew what was going on. He and Lu Yi had already helped Jade Conch gain an overwhelming advantage, so with Lu Ye's 5 precious blood clones joining the battle formation, how could the remaining enemies be a match for them? As the enemies on the battlefield were dealt with one after another, their advantage snowballed, so they were able to end the battle in such a short time. At this moment, Jade Conch's Yu Yao had all rushed over. Ma Shangxi calmed down, knowing that he only needed to focus on dealing with the filthy giant. He didn't need to intervene in the rest. The insect path trembled as another filthy figure descended. Lu Yi could sense that the stability of the insect path had once again weakened. It was just as he had guessed. Although the insect path could allow Yu Yao to pass through, the stability of the insect path would be affected with each passing Yu Yao. Moreover, the intensity of the impact should be related to the level of cultivation. On the other side of the insect path, a peak Yu Yao descended. Looking at its figure, it was the water spirit clan of the 5 elements spirit clan. Lu Yi had never seen a real water spirit clan, but he had read a description of them. In their normal form, a water spirit clan member's body was like a mass of flowing water, with the shape of a human. Moreover, because of their attribute, they gave off a gentle feeling. However, at this moment, looking around, this water spirit clan member did not have any gentleness. Its aura was full of filth, giving off an extremely ominous feeling. It indeed had the shape of a human, with water flowing on the surface of its body, but it was pitch black sewage. This water spirit clan member descended from the insect path aggressively, but as soon as it stood still, its expression froze. Because it found that the situation seemed to be a little different from what it had imagined. In fact, the water spirit clan member on the other side of the insect path couldn't detect the specific situation here. It could only vaguely sense it, but the continuous turbulence of the insect path and the aftershocks of the battle here were enough for the water spirit clan member on the other side to determine that the situation here was not very good. Therefore, the water spirit clan first sent a giant over, and then a Yu Yao, and both of them were peak Yu Yao. Not only that, but several Yu Yao were also preparing to come over. The water spirit clan member originally thought that even if the situation here was not good, it wouldn't be too bad. After all, the battle here had just broken out not long ago. Who would have thought that the situation here would be so bad? Not a single Yu Yao from the Filth tribe remained. Only the Filth tribe giant, who had arrived before it, was still alive. Moreover, its aura was extremely weak. What terrified it even more was that over a dozen Yu Yao's auras were swiftly converging from all directions. They surrounded it in the blink of an eye, and then they launched a flurry of attacks at it. There was no doubt that Yu Yao was at the pinnacle of her cultivation. In a one-on-one battle, even if she had to take on 3 or 5 opponents at once, she wouldn't have any problems at all. Even if she wasn't a match for them, she would still be able to keep herself alive. However, the problem at hand was no longer a 3 versus 5 battle. This was a group of Yu Yao besieging it. Unless it was Rizhao, there was no way it could survive such a siege. On the other side, the filthy giant race also noticed Xue Ling's situation and immediately turned to join her, obviously wanting to join forces with her. It was difficult for any one of them to turn the situation around, but if they joined forces, they might have a chance. They didn't need to do too much. They just needed to hold on until more filthy race experts came to support them. When Ma Shangxi saw this, she knew what the filthy giant race was planning. She immediately circulated her magic power, and the sea of blood shook. In an instant, the filthy giant race's body became sluggish, as if his entire body had sunk into a swamp, making it difficult for him to move. Lu Yi had already charged forward with his saber. However, his target was not the filthy giant race. This fellow was a little difficult to deal with. Even with Ma Shangxi secretly assisting him, he was still in danger. Moreover, the filthy giant race already had enough wounds on his body. Even if Lu Yi ignored him, Ma Shangxi could still take his life. Therefore, Lu Ye's target was the water spirit clan member who had just arrived. Many Yu Yao from Jade Conch, as well as his 5 treasured blood clones, had already rushed forward, so Lu Yi was naturally happy to join in the fun. The battle began again, but this time, the Jade Conch cultivator's momentum was unstoppable. Half an incense stick's worth of time ago, when Jade Conch had decided to go all out, she had never imagined that the situation would develop like this. It had to be known that Chou Wu had already been prepared to sacrifice himself. At that time, he felt that even if they won this battle, they would have to pay an extremely heavy price. However, half an incense stick's worth of time later, the Yu Yao who had come first had all been killed. On the other hand, not a single one of them had died. At most, they had been corroded to varying degrees by the filthy energy. This kind of result was extremely shocking and unimaginable at first. However, Jade Conch knew who the credit for this was. If Lu Yi and his servant hadn't opened up the situation, half of them would have died. The most likely outcome would have been complete annihilation. Every Jade Conch cultivator and Yu Yao rejoiced that Lu Yi and his servant just happened to be in Jade Conch as guests and had rushed here together. They already had an absolute advantage in numbers, and with the increase in morale, the Water Spirit clan member was instantly beaten senseless. He immediately used all of his strength to defend himself, but even so, the situation was extremely dangerous. Lu Yi had already reunited with his 5 treasured blood clones, forming a Black Tortoise formation. Relying on the Black Tortoise formation's powerful defenses, they blocked the Water Spirit clan members' attacks head-on. This undoubtedly gave Jade Conch's Yu Yao more space to display their abilities. After a few moments of intense battle, the sound of Yu Yao's death could be heard from the Blood Sea. Ma Shangxi had taken the initiative to deal with her opponent. The Water Spirit clan member was actually very powerful, but against Lu Yi and his servant, he hadn't even been able to display half of his strength before dying in a sullen death. With the Water Spirit clan member dead, the Water Spirit clan member was in an extremely bad situation. Although it was born with the ability to dodge most attacks due to its race, it still couldn't withstand the combined attacks of so many Yu Yao. When it sensed that the Water Spirit clan member had died in battle, its pitch-black eyes dimmed. It knew that it would be difficult for it to survive this time. "Don't kill him. Hold him down." Seeing that the situation had been decided, Lu Yi immediately transmitted his voice in all directions. At the same time, he and his 5 treasured blood clones made their auras shake the heavens. Although the Jade Conch's Yu Yao didn't understand what Lu Yi wanted to do, they still immediately slowed down their attacks. If Lu Yi had said this before the battle, the Jade Conch cultivators naturally wouldn't have listened. However, this battle was won by Lu Yi and his servant. Without them, there wouldn't be the current situation. In addition, they had already seen Lu Ye's powerful foundation, so it was enough for Lu Yi to have a certain amount of authority here. Lu Ye's thoughts were very simple. If the battle here ended and the Water Spirit clan members on the other side sensed that something was wrong, they would definitely not send Yu Yao over. When the time came, the insect path would lie across here, and Jade Conch would be in a very awkward situation. They couldn't kill their way through the insect path to the Water Spirit clan. That would be courting death. Since they couldn't fight back, they had to give the Water Spirit clan a painful blow. They had to let the Water Spirit clan know that Jade Conch was not to be trifled with. This was the only way to make the Water Spirit clan retreat. Although this location was closer to the Jade Conch realm, the 9 provinces and the Jade Conch realm were in the same galaxy. They were as close as lips and teeth. In the face of such a matter, Lu Yi simply couldn't extricate himself from it. This could be considered a family matter. Therefore, Lu Yi wanted to keep the Water Spirit clan member alive. Firstly, it would attract more Water Spirit clan Yu Yao to come and help. Secondly, if more Water Spirit clan Yu Yao passed through the insect path, it would affect the stability of the insect path. What if the insect path collapsed? Therefore, in any case, keeping the Water Spirit clan member alive was the best choice. It was also the only choice at the moment. The Jade Conch cultivators weren't stupid. Although they didn't understand Lu Ye's intentions at first, when they saw that their side clearly had the absolute advantage and he was still making such a big commotion, they realized what he was planning. Soon, under Cho Wu's command, the Water Spirit clan Yu Yao of Jade Conch also began to move. They madly urged their magic power, making it seem like the battle here was in a stalemate, but in reality, it was the Water Spirit clan member who was suppressed to the point that he couldn't even raise his head. The Water Spirit clan member undoubtedly saw through Lu Yi and the others' intentions. He suddenly raised his head and glanced in Lu Ye's direction. A cold voice came from his mouth. "You can't escape. No one can escape from where the Water Spirit clan has their eyes on." In the next instant, an extremely dangerous aura suddenly spread out from the Water Spirit clan. His pitch-black body suddenly erupted with dazzling light. Spirit flash. Not good, retreat. Cho Wu's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly roared. Spirit flash was the racial innate skill of the 5 Elements Spirit clan. They had crystal cores in their bodies, which were similar to the Yao cores of monster beasts. In a desperate situation, they could erupt with all the power of their crystal cores in one go. It was similar to self-detonation. The self-detonation of a peak Yu Yao was extremely terrifying. Therefore, when he saw the Water Spirit clan members' actions, Cho Wu knew that things were not going well. As soon as his voice fell, the group of Yu Yao frantically retreated. Lu Yi also activated the Black Tortoise formation to its maximum power as he retreated. The light completely exploded, enveloping a large area. The pitch-black power of corruption rushed in all directions, almost turning this part of the starry sky into a black hole. Lu Ye's body tumbled, and even the Black Tortoise formation was on the verge of shattering. At the critical moment, Ma Shangxi arrived in time to save him, enveloping him in the sea of blood. Even so, Lu Yi still felt dizzy. The violent power slowly subsided. Lu Yi shook his head and withdrew the 5 treasured blood clones. He also ordered Ma Shangxi to withdraw the sea of blood. When he looked up, the Water Spirit clan member had already disappeared. Lu Yi frowned. He had not expected the Water Spirit clan member to be so decisive. A peak Yu Yao had actually self-detonated without any warning. If he did not have the Black Tortoise formation, the situation just now would have been somewhat troublesome. The Water Spirit clan member's self-detonation had undoubtedly ruined Lu Ye's plan. This was because he could clearly sense that the Yu Yao's aura in the insect path was slowly fading. Clearly, the Water Spirit clan members who had been preparing to reinforce him had retreated. End of chapter. Chapter 1711. The Filth Tribe were no fools. Although they couldn't find out the specifics, they could still sense the general situation. They'd sent 2 peak Yu Yao to deal with the Jade Conch, but to no avail. Clearly, they'd realized how difficult the Jade Conch was to deal with. The Water Spirit filth had self-destructed not only because it knew it had no chance of survival, but also because it was sending a message to the Filth Tribe on the other end of the insect path. Judging from the results, its plan had undoubtedly succeeded. Within the insect path, the Filth Tribe members who'd been preparing to reinforce the Jade Conch retreated, and the Yu Yao's aura slowly faded away. The battle wasn't over yet. The Filth Tribe had more than just Yu Yao. There were also constellations and divine seas. Although some of them had died in the aftermath of the battle, most of them had managed to survive. The Jade Conch battleships and constellations hunted the Filth Tribe members outside the gray fog, but due to the distance, they couldn't wipe them all out. However, now that the Yu Yao had retreated, the constellations and divine seas Filth Tribe members were unlikely to survive. A short while later, the Filth Tribe members in the gray fog were all killed, and a group of Yu Yao charged out. Apart from Ma Shangxi, everyone else was covered in dust, their auras unstable. This was a clear sign that they'd been corroded by the power of filth. Although the battle hadn't lasted very long, Jade Conch's Yu Yao hadn't been able to protect themselves in such an intense battle. It was inevitable that they'd be corroded by the power of filth. This was especially true of the Water Spirit Filth Tribe's final self-destruction. The thick, viscous filth had spread out in all directions. Even Lu Ye's Black Tortoise formation hadn't been able to block it, let alone the others. A group of people gathered around Lu Yi. He helped them burn away the filth in their bodies. As he busied himself, Lu Yi frowned as he stared at the gray fog. Things were getting a little troublesome. Although this battle had crushed the Filth Tribe's plan to invade the Jade Conch, and they'd even killed every last one of them, the gray fog formed by filth had grown even larger. In terms of size alone, it was twice as large as before, and the filth inside was undoubtedly thicker. After all, so many Filth Tribe members had died, and there were more than a dozen Yu Yao among them. After they died, the filth in their bodies would leak out. Lu Yi had never experienced such a battle before. Killing the enemy was not enough, but after the enemy died, they left behind an indelible filth. It was truly difficult to deal with. After a short while, the filth in Yue Yao's body was completely burned away, and her complexion looked much better. Cho Wu looked at the area shrouded in gray fog and said, "Although we won this battle, the insect path is still there. If we don't deal with it, Jade Conch will never have peace." Lu Yi turned to Ma Shangxi and said, "The filthy race has already located the Jade Conch. If we find a way to deal with this insect path, will the filthy race be able to locate this place and open the insect path again?" If that was the case, it wouldn't work even if they destroyed the insect path because the depraved race could open another insect path at any time. Ma Shangxi said, I don't think so. As far as I know, although the Heavenly Frost Mirror has the ability to locate a target, it requires some preparation. In other words, if the filth race can establish a foothold here, they will have the ability to establish another insect path. Now that the filthy race has been wiped out, without any reinforcements, the Heavenly Frost Mirror's Heavenly Frost Chi is completely random. Lu Yi understood. In other words, as long as we destroy this insect path, it will be almost impossible for the filthy race to locate Jade Conch again. The starry sky was vast, and although the Heavenly Frost Mirror was a starry sky's supreme treasure, the location of the Heavenly Frost Chi was random. Jade Conch had been unlucky enough to be selected once, but it couldn't be selected a second time. The chances were too slim. That's right. Ma Shangxi nodded. Then things will be easy. Lu Yi turned to look at Chou Wu. The latter understood and immediately ordered, rest for a while. Half a day later, follow this old man to destroy the insect path. If it was a stable insect path, it would be impossible for the group of Yueyao to destroy it, but in the end, this was not a stable insect path, so there was still some room for manipulation. After the great battle and the corrosion of the filth, everyone had consumed a lot of energy, so they immediately sat down to meditate. Half a day passed in the blink of an eye. There was no movement from the insect path, but the insect path was still there, which made Lu Yi feel a little uneasy. Because the filthy race's defeat in Jade Conch was obvious, they probably didn't dare to send Yueyao here to avoid further losses. Since that was the case, it meant that the filthy race knew they couldn't do anything to them. But why was the insect path still there? Logically speaking, the filthy race could have used the Heavenly Frost Mirror to close the insect path. The filthy race had the ability to do so. Since they didn't do so, they were obviously unwilling to give up and were probably going to try again. Lu Yi had never dealt with the filthy race before, so he couldn't guess what they were thinking. But no matter what they were going to do, it was always right to make the first move. Under Chou Wu's lead, the group of Yueyao charged into the filthy land and soon arrived at the insect path. The formation dispersed, Chou Wu stood still and ordered, "Let's go." In the next instant, magic power surged, and the aura of each Yueyao rose steadily, but no one attacked. Everyone was accumulating power. They were obviously going to use their strongest techniques to end the battle in one fell swoop. Lu Yi activated the Fire Phoenix Spirit inscriptions. Even though he didn't think there was much hope, he could only try his best under such circumstances. After a full 20 breaths, accompanied by a roar, Jade Conch's first attack was launched. An attack condensed from violent magic power crashed into the insect path. Then came the second, the third. Lu Ye's Fire Phoenix also pounced on the insect path, the scorching power almost distorting the space. More than 10 Yueyao unleashed their full power. Although there was no systematic coordination, and they were just attacking without thinking, such an attack was so powerful that even sunshine would have to avoid it. The void trembled, and dazzling light exploded continuously, the aftermath spreading in all directions. Lu Yi paid close attention to the insect path's movements until everything calmed down. When the insect path entered his field of vision, he couldn't help but frown. It really didn't work. Before he attacked, he actually had some guesses. The insect path was too mysterious, and it was very difficult to shake it from the outside. If the insect path could really be shaken by external forces, then there should have been signs when the water spirit Filthy Clan self-destructed. One had to know that when the water spirit Filthy Clan self-destructed, they were standing right next to the insect path. The impact of the self-destruction was much stronger than the attack launched by Lu Yi and the others. Even the water spirit Filthy Clan's self-destruction didn't have any impact on the insect path, so what was the point of their side's attack? If they wanted to destroy the insect path, they had to start from the inside. To put it simply, Yueyao had to pass through the insect path. As long as enough of them passed through, the stability of the insect path would be affected. This could be seen from the commotion caused by the descent of the giant Filth tribe and water spirit Filth tribe. However, this was impossible. The Yueyao of the Filthy Clan could invade Jade Conch through the insect path, But the Yueyao of Jade Conch couldn't go to the filthy clan through the insect path. That would be courting death. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if one of the Yueyao was willing to sacrifice herself, one was definitely not enough. As for how many Yueyao would be needed to make the insect path collapse, that was a number that no one could calculate. The Yueyao of Jade Conch were undoubtedly aware of this as well, and their expressions were ugly. They didn't try a second time. Some things only needed to be verified once. Too many attempts would only be a waste of time and energy. Let's retreat for now. Cho Wu waved his hand. The group retreated from the filthy land dejectedly. Because there was no battle this time, everyone protected themselves well and didn't get corroded by the power of filth. What do we do now? Han Dong looked worried. Lu Yi was also very annoyed. The insect path was a huge problem. Other things aside, Jade Conch's group of Yueyao were basically nailed to death here. Even he couldn't leave. However, they really didn't have the ability to destroy the insect path, so they could only let the filthy clan know the difficulty and retreat. From Jade Conch's perspective, the filthy clan's losses in the previous battle were undoubtedly huge. After all, there were more than 10 Yueyao, and even 2 peak Yueyao had died. However, that was from Jade Conch's perspective. Jade Conch itself wasn't strong, and a dozen Yueyao was already a very strong force. However, from the filthy clan's perspective, a dozen Yueyao was probably nothing. Therefore, even with such losses, they didn't give up on Jade Conch. Otherwise, they would have closed the insect path long ago. Now that the insect path was still there, it meant that the filthy clan was still interested in Jade Conch. This wasn't a good sign. Everyone was silent. They didn't have any good ideas. Amidst this silence, there was suddenly movement on the insect path. Everyone sensed it immediately and hurriedly looked in that direction. Many faint auras appeared on the insect path, and they became clearer and clearer. This undoubtedly meant that filthy clan members were passing through the insect path and rushing over. However, based on the strength of their auras, the filthy clan members weren't strong. In fact, they were very weak. They were only at the Divine Sea realm. Unlike the Yueyao who needed some time to pass through the insect path, the Divine Sea filthy clan members passed through the insect path very quickly. Almost the moment everyone sensed it, filthy clan members had already rushed out of the insect path and descended on the filthy land. More and more figures appeared one after another. In just a moment, more than 100 Divine Sea filthy clan members appeared there, and more were rushing over. Kill them, Cho Wu ordered. He didn't need to do anything at all. One of the 2 warships erupted with a bright beam of light that shot toward the gathering place of the filthy clan members. In an instant, countless Divine Sea filthy clan members were killed. However, it couldn't stop the filthy clan's invasion at all. All kinds of figures continuously appeared on the insect path. The 2 warships began to move, killing batch after batch, but even so, they were still somewhat powerless. The Jade Conch constellations gathered around the filthy land began to attack. The exit of the insect path immediately became a burial ground for living beings. End of chapter. Chapter 1712. The Divine Sea Defilers who came from the insect path were killed almost as soon as they appeared. On the other hand, they didn't suffer any losses at all by attacking from afar. However, neither Lu Yi nor Yu Yao of Jade Conch were happy at all. This was because everyone realized what the Defilers were planning. Such a scene had happened once when the insect path was first formed. At that time, the Defilers had sent many Divine Sea Defilers from the insect path to protect the Jade Conch cultivators. In the beginning, Jade Conch had the geographical advantage. The Defilers who came from the other end of the insect path couldn't stand at all. However, as more and more Defilers died, the power of defilement dissipated and slowly turned the area around the insect path into a land of defilement. The Jade Conch cultivators could only retreat. As the land of defilement expanded, the Jade Conch cultivators retreated further and further away. Their geographical advantage was gradually erased. The Defilers sent out Xingxiu and Yu Yao to gradually take back the geographical advantage that originally belonged to Jade Conch. Therefore, when Lu Yi came with Cho Wu and the others, Yu Yao, who had been stationed here for a few days, was somewhat dejected. It wasn't that they weren't strong enough, but that the Defiler's invasion method was too difficult to resist. This defilement domain was a bridgehead built by the Defilers. The Defilers' plan was obvious. They wanted to use the deaths of more Defilers to expand the scope of their domain. In theory, as long as enough Defilers died, it was possible for the domain to cover the entire Jade Conch galaxy. At that time, no matter how strong Lu Yi and the others were, it would be difficult for them to use it. Of course, this was only in theory. In reality, it was almost impossible to achieve this because it would require too many Defilers to die. However, if they only expanded the scope of the defilement domain to a level that Jade Conch cultivators couldn't do anything about, there was still hope. Other things aside, as long as the size of the domain expanded 3 to 5 times, it would be extremely dangerous for Jade Conch. The depraved race had invaded and conquered countless realms, enslaving countless races. If they didn't care about their own lives, they had the ability to do this. However, Jade Conch couldn't spare them. This was the most disgusting thing about the Defilers. Killing them wasn't good, but not killing them was even worse. Since ancient times, there had been galaxies that could withstand the Defilers' first wave of attack, but they'd often lost to such shameless tactics. The attacks did not stop, and the defilements died one after another. At a certain point, a strange creature that was pitch black and round emerged from the tunnel. As soon as it appeared, it was blasted to pieces by a warship. At the moment of this strange creature's death, an extremely thick filth suddenly erupted from its body and spread in all directions. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the tainted domain, which was already of a considerable size, suddenly expanded outwards. The expressions of the group of Yu Yao changed. The death of the Divine Sea's filth race only brought a small increase to the filth domain. However, there were too many deaths, so after the filth race took action, the filth domain slowly expanded outwards. However, the foul energy contained within the strange creature's body was clearly extremely dense, and after its death, it brought about a clear increase in the power of the foul domain. The situation was not good. Of course, the Yu Yao of Jade Conch could charge in and stand guard in front of the tunnel. If the other party dared to send their Yu Yao over, they could surround them. However, fighting in the corrupted domain required them to constantly maintain their magic power. How long could the Yu Yao of Jade Conch last? If they relaxed even a little, the filth race's Yu Yao would be able to successfully descend. Once they succeeded, there would be a second, a third. "I'll go take a look," Lu Yi said as he strode towards the corrupted domain. "Be careful." Chou Wu didn't know what Lu Yi was planning, but if there were only Divine Sea's filth race there, Lu Yi wouldn't be in any danger, so he didn't stop him. Lu Yi nodded and rushed into the corrupted domain. The foul energy was clearly denser than before. This was a change brought about by the deaths of countless Divine Sea's filth race members. In such an environment, once Jade Conch and the Yu Yao entered, the pressure would definitely be greater than before. Lu Yi stopped and silently circulated his magic power. In the next instant, his magic power suddenly expanded outwards. His entire body seemed to be on fire. With Lu Yi as the center, a huge circle of fire spread out. This was the eruption of his magic power. In this state, even with Lu Ye's foundation, he couldn't maintain it for too long. Thus, as he circulated his magic power, he held 2 spirit crystals in both hands to replenish his consumption. Then, he activated the talent tree's power. Invisible roots of the talent tree spread out, reaching out to every corner of the domain where his magic power spread. Outside the corrupted domain, Han Dong, who had been paying attention to Lu Ye's movements, suddenly exclaimed. The others were also shocked, and then they were overjoyed. This was because at the place where Lu Yi was located, where the fiery red halo enveloped, the gray mist-like foul energy was rapidly disappearing. In the blink of an eye, it had completely disappeared, and a vacuum had appeared in the foul domain. It was as if Lu Yi had circulated his magic power to incinerate the foul energy. Jade Conch's Yu Yao were pleasantly surprised. Lu Yi had previously demonstrated the ability to help them incinerate the foul energy that had invaded their bodies. Thus, when they saw this bizarre scene, although they were surprised, they felt that it was only natural. Since he could incinerate the foul energy that had invaded their bodies, then it shouldn't be a problem to incinerate the foul energy outside. Only Cho Wu revealed a worried expression after his initial surprise. If Lu Yi had this ability, why hadn't he used it at the beginning? This wasn't because he was stingy, but because it would consume a lot of energy. That was why Lu Yi hadn't used it at the beginning. However, he had no choice now because the corrupted domain was expanding. If he continued to ignore it, Jade Conk's situation would be very bad. Cho Wu's guess was correct, but not completely correct. Lu Ye's consumption of magic power was indeed enormous, but it wasn't like what Cho Wu had imagined. If that was the case, Lu Yi wouldn't have any concerns. He could refine spirit jades to replenish his magic power. However, incinerating the foul energy consumed the talent tree's fuel reserves. Moreover, the rate of consumption was terrifying. Lu Yi could feel that the talent tree's fuel was rapidly decreasing. Fortunately, he had replenished the talent tree's fuel before leaving the Wanxiang Sea. Otherwise, Lu Yi wouldn't have dared to do this. Lu Ye's figure didn't stop moving. He continued to wander in the corrupted domain, incinerating the foul energy wherever he passed. The rate of fuel consumption was terrifying. It was dozens of times faster than when he cultivated under the Wanxiang Sea. This wasn't because the foul energy was more powerful than the seawater of the Wanxiang Sea, but because the area he spread out was too large. Cultivating under the Wanxiang Sea was different from cultivating under the Wanxiang Sea. When he cultivated, he only needed to incinerate the impurities that invaded his body. However, he was now incinerating the foul energy around him. He wasn't burning magic power, he was burning money. Lu Ye's heart ached to the extreme. Soon, Lu Yi passed through the domain of corruption. Wherever he passed, a huge hole appeared in the domain of corruption. Lu Yi turned around and charged into the corrupted domain again. At the insect path, the Divine Sea's filth tribe continued to surge out. However, the corrupted domain could no longer expand. Instead, as Lu Yi weaved back and forth, pure lands appeared one after another. After working for half a day, Lu Yi finally arrived at the insect path. At this moment, the vast corrupted domain had been incinerated by him. However, as long as the filth tribe continued to descend on the insect path, the filth would never be completely purified. Perhaps the filth tribe was unaware of the situation here. Instead, the Divine Sea's filth tribe showed no signs of stopping. Lu Yi knew that things weren't over yet, so he only stopped at the insect path for a moment before turning around and rushing back. A group of Jade Conch cultivators looked at him as if he was their savior. However, Lu Yi wasn't very happy. He only looked at Cho Wu and said, "Realm Lord Cho, I need to leave for a while." Cho Wu was startled. "Where are you going?" "To call for reinforcements." Jade Conch alone couldn't solve the filth tribe's problem. The filth tribe had no intention of closing the insect path at all. It was obvious that they harbored ill intentions toward Jade Conch. The previous battle didn't hurt them at all. In that case, he could only gather more and stronger forces and let the filth tribe know that Jade Conch wasn't a pushover. Moreover, his talent tree's fuel needed to be replenished. He could purify the filth domain once or twice. However, as long as the filth tribe's invasion didn't stop, he had to keep purifying. Therefore, his talent tree's fuel needed to be sufficient. He could ask Jade Conch to help him collect fire-type treasures. They should have a lot of them here. The problem of the talent tree's fuel was easy to solve. However, with his current strength, it wasn't enough to make the filth tribe afraid or hurt them. Lu Yi thought about it. To solve this problem, he had to borrow the power of the Soul Tribe. If he could invite Ri of the Soul Tribe, the filth tribe should be able to retreat. The only thing he was worried about was whether the filth tribe would make any big moves during his absence. However, if he wanted to completely solve the filth tribe's problem, he had to take this risk. Reinforcements? Cho Wu was puzzled. Where are you going to get reinforcements? In this galaxy, Jade Conch was the strongest. He had heard of the Chaos Explosion Zone and Thousand Mound Tomb. There was also Ri there. However, it was too far to go there. I have my own plans. Lu Yi didn't explain too much. I'm going to bring Ma Shangxi with me, so I can only rely on you guys. No matter what, we can't let the filth tribe stabilize the worm path. The reason why he wanted to bring Ma Shangxi was because he was faster and could save time. Chou Wu looked worried. How long will it take? Lu Yi calculated silently. A month should be enough. A month? Chou Wu was stunned. Where could Lu Yi go to get reinforcements in a month? However, since Lu Yi didn't say, he couldn't ask. His expression turned serious. This is related to Jade Conk's survival. Junior brother, don't worry. Even if Jade Conk has to fight to the last person, we won't let the Filth tribe stabilize the worm path. End of chapter. Chapter 1713. After making up his mind, Lu Yi no longer hesitated. Hesitation would only cause him to miss a good opportunity. Before leaving, Lu Yi asked Chou Wu to collect all the fire-type treasures in the Jade Conk world. Then he left quickly with Ma Shangxi. The star boat sped away at full speed, heading in the direction of the 9 provinces. After Lu Yi left, many cultivators in the Jade Conk world looked at the chaos on the insect path and felt a little nervous. A large number of Divine Ocean Filth clan members were still rushing out. After being killed, the filthy power spread. Although they had medical cultivators who constantly used methods to dispel and purify it, the effect was completely different from Lu Ye's previous methods. Compared to the pervading filthy power, their efforts were simply a drop in the bucket. Ma Shangxi also knew that time was tight, so she drove the star boat with all her might. When the master and servant set off from the 9 states, it took them 10 days to reach the Green Li Dao world. From there, it took them another half a month to reach the Jade Conk world. However, because the 3 realms in the galaxy were distributed in a triangular shape, the journey back did not take so long. Especially under the premise that Ma Shangxi hurried with all her might, it only took them 10 days to reach a place near the 9 states where they could enter the Soul Clan's ancestral land. Lu Yi used the ability of the Little Flower Realm to put Ma Shangxi in it. Then, he began to use the Rainbow Divine Lotus to connect to the Soul Clan's ancestral land. 2 hours later, Lu Ye's figure appeared in the space of the Soul Clan's ancestral land. Without any hesitation, Lu Yi identified the direction and went straight to the Lotus Land where the Starry Sky Pool was located. When he saw Lu Yi, Elder Su Yuan, who was in charge of guarding the place, was speechless. Since ancient times, no one had entered the Soul Clan's ancestral land so frequently. Even the Soul Clan itself rarely left this place. However, recently, Lu Yi came and left again. He did not know what he was busy with. He seemed to be in a hurry. Where did you come from? Su Yuan asked. From my homeland. Lu Ye's expression was cold. Elder, I have something to ask you for help. The Soul Jade is gone again? Su Yuan looked at him. It's not the Soul Jade. Lu Yi waved his hand and went straight to the point. Elder, do you know about the Filth clan? Su Yuan's expression turned solemn. Of course. But where did you encounter the Filth clan? The Filth race has invaded the galaxy where my homeland is located. Lu Yi briefly explained the situation on the other side and pleaded, Elder, please lend a helping hand and help this star system resolve this disaster. Hearing Lu Ye's narration, Su Yuan's expression also became solemn. If Lu Yi had come to the Soul race for help, Su Yuan might not have agreed. After all, cultivators faced all kinds of dangers in the outside world. No matter what danger they encountered, they would always think that the Soul race could help. That was not the mentality a cultivator should have. However, the corrupt race was different. The Soul race was an extremely ancient race and knew a lot about the corrupt race. They had even fought against the corrupt race in a head-on battle. There was a blood feud between the 2 races. In addition, Lu Ye's status in the Soul race was different, so Su Yuan only pondered for a moment before nodding and saying, the filthy race's calamity cannot be ignored. How about this? This old man will personally go with you and resolve this problem. Lu Yi was overjoyed when he heard this. Elder is benevolent. I thank Elder on behalf of the billions of living beings in this star system. The corrupt race's first wave of attack had ended in complete failure. Even more than a dozen Yu Yao had died in battle, but such losses did not make them feel any pain. In the end, such losses were nothing to the corrupt race. Moreover, after the first wave of probing, the corrupt race had probably noticed the foundation of the Jade Conch galaxy, which was why they were pestering them endlessly. However, if Riri came forward, the situation would definitely be different. The corrupt race would inevitably re-evaluate the foundation of the Jade Conch galaxy. In this way, the Jade Conch galaxy would have a chance to completely resolve this problem. Lu Yi was willing to let the battlefield take a certain risk and come to the Soul Race just to ask Riri for help. This was the only place he had a chance to ask Riri for help. He thought there might be some twists and turns, but he did not expect Su Yuan to agree so readily. This problem was completely solved. Lu Yi was happy, but Su Yuan poured cold water on him again. But unless it is absolutely necessary, this old man will not personally take action. Lu Yi was stunned. If Su Yuan did not take action, how could he make the corrupt race retreat? Su Yuan sighed and explained, "Let me put it this way, if this old man takes action, the situation may be even more troublesome. My soul race and the corrupt race have a deep hatred. If they can't detect the aura of the soul race, then it's fine, but if they do, and it's Riri like this old man, they will definitely be more determined to obtain your galaxy." Lu Yi did not know what kind of hatred there was between the soul race and the corrupt race, but since Su Yuan said so, it was definitely not an ordinary hatred. Since you know about the corrupt race, then you must know about the Heaven Frost Mirror. The insect path of the corrupt race is formed by the Heaven Frost Mirror freezing space. Lu Yi nodded. Ma Shangxi had told him and the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators about this from the very beginning. The insect path opened by the Heaven Frost Mirror is very unstable. When the insect path is first formed, the corrupt race members who can pass through it are not strong. Only when the insect path slowly stabilizes to a certain extent can Yu Yao pass through. Therefore, when the corrupt race invades a galaxy, a group of Yu Yao usually goes first and then finds a way to completely stabilize the insect path before Riri descends. Su Yuan undoubtedly knew the situation of the corrupt race very well, so he casually shared all kinds of information, but if you think that's all the corrupt race has, then you're wrong. Lu Ye's expression turned solemn. "Please enlighten me, Elder. This Heaven Frost Mirror is a starry sky supreme treasure after all. Under normal circumstances, the insect path opened by the Heaven Frost Mirror is indeed unstable, but if the corrupt race pays a certain price to stimulate the Heaven Frost Mirror's power, they can stabilize the insect path for a while. This time will not be too long, maybe 3 to 5 breaths, maybe even a dozen breaths." Lu Ye's expression froze. Ma Shangxi had not mentioned this before, so he obviously did not know. In other words, whether the insect path opened by the Heaven Frost Mirror can be stabilized or not depends on the corrupt race's choice. It's not that they can't, but it's a matter of whether they want to or not. Of course, if they really do so, the corrupt race will have to pay a huge price, so under normal circumstances, they will not do so. However, if there is enough reason, they will not hesitate to forcibly stabilize the insect path. Once they did so, at least 2 Rizhao passages would arrive in 3 to 5 breaths of time. If that really happened, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the Jade Conch Galaxy. Su Yuan pointed at himself. Once this old master's aura is leaked, the corrupt race will forcibly stabilize the insect path and send at least 2 Riri to descend. Lu Yi finally understood why Su Yuan said that he would not personally take action unless it was absolutely necessary. Because once his existence was exposed, not only would it not bring any benefits to the Jade Conch Galaxy, but it would also cause more trouble. Moreover, as far as Lu Yi knew, the soul race was a very special race. Their ability to fight head-on with others was very weak. They only cultivated the power of the soul their entire lives. Even if they were as strong as the Riri, this drawback could not be eliminated. Take Su Yuan for example. If he faced another Riri expert, he would definitely not be the opponent if he only used normal methods. The only thing he could do was start a soul battle. This kind of battle was very fierce. Either the enemy died or he died. There was basically no other possibility. Therefore, when the spiritlings fought against their enemies, they would usually use the soul possession technique to attach themselves to a cultivator with a fleshly body. This way, the strength of the cultivator they attached themselves to would greatly increase. Moreover, when fighting against their enemies, the spiritlings could also use soul techniques to harass their enemies, creating a 2-on-1 situation. Due to various reasons, the soul race rarely fought with their enemies personally, especially against the filth race. It was even more inappropriate for Su Yuan to expose his existence. But don't worry, this old master will bring a batch of Yu Yao over to help you. As long as the corrupt race loses enough Yu Yao, they will most likely retreat on their own. That is good. Lu Yi nodded. The situation was a little different from what he had planned, but it was not a big problem. How many Yu Yao do you have on your side? Su Yuan asked. Lu Yi silently calculated and reported a number. Su Yuan nodded and his divine sense surged in all directions. A moment later, Yu Yao of the soul race rushed over from all over the ancestral land. When they saw Lu Yi, they sized him up curiously. Most of the soul race knew about Lu Ye's existence. After all, he was the first living being to enter the soul race's ancestral land apart from the saint beasts. However, not many of the soul race had actually seen Lu Yi. Su Yuan briefly explained the situation, and the Yu Yao of the soul race nodded. If it was any other battle, they might not be interested. However, if it was to kill the corrupt race, no one would refuse. After gathering everyone, Su Yuan turned to Lu Yi and said, "Point the way." Lu Yi quickly immersed his mind into the starry sky pool and pointed out the direction for the soul race cultivators. The next moment, under Su Yuan's lead, many figures entered the starry sky pool. In the blink of an eye, many figures appeared in the starry sky outside the 9 states. Lu Yi let Ma Shangxi out. When Ma Shangxi saw so many unfamiliar faces around Lu Yi, he was clearly stunned. He had not been in the Little Flower realm for long, so he had no idea what Lu Yi had done. How did he get so many Yu Yao all of a sudden? What shocked Ma Shangxi even more was that these Yu Yao were of the soul race. And there was also sunshine. Ma Shangxi had no idea what his holy monarch was up to. He had said that he was going to call for reinforcements, but he had brought so many of them all at once. There were too many questions in his heart, but he could not ask them. He obediently summoned his star boat and carried Lu Yi and the soul race's Yu Yao to the battlefield. 10 days later, the group arrived at the battlefield. Lu Yi frowned as he looked at the battlefield from afar. In less than a month, the area he had purified was filled with a large area of corruption. Moreover, the scale was much larger than before. End of chapter. Chapter 17:14. Not only was the scale of the filth domain larger than before, but the filth inside also seemed to be denser. This was undoubtedly the result of the deaths of a large number of low-level filth creatures, especially those with thick filth energy in their bodies. They seemed to be born to form the filth domain. Jade Conch's Yu Yao were scattered all over the place. Even when they were meditating, they couldn't relax their vigilance. Lu Yi could tell from their posture that they had experienced many battles during this period. They obviously wanted to stop the Yu Yao of the filth race from descending, but unfortunately, they didn't succeed. This was because there were more Yu Yao of the filth race in the filth domain, and there were even more of them than before. Just like before, they were setting up that tower-like object again, trying to use it to stabilize the insect path. Lu Yi also discovered another problem. The insect path seemed to be larger than before. Obviously, something had changed while he was gone. Sensing the auras of Lu Yi and the others, Cho Wu immediately came forward. When he saw so many Yu Yao with Lu Yi, he couldn't help but be startled. When Lu Yi said that he was going to call for reinforcements, he didn't understand what Lu Yi was going to do. But now, it seemed that reinforcements had really come. There were more than 10 Yu Yao, and their auras were very strong. Junior brother Lu. Cho Wu led a group of Jade Conch's Yu Yao over and greeted him. Realm Lord Cho. Lu Yi replied. Looking at the filth domain, he was slightly puzzled. Why is the insect path more stable than before? According to his previous observations, every time a Yu Yao passed through the insect path, it would have a certain impact on its stability. Logically speaking, with so many Yu Yao of the filth race coming over, the insect path should be very unstable. But this was not the case. Not only did the insect path not deteriorate, It became even more stable. Chou said, I don't know what the filth race did, but nearly 10 days ago, the insect path suddenly changed. Then, several Yu Yao of the filth race rushed out. We couldn't guard against them and could only retreat. Then it became like this. Jade Conk's Yu Yao had been fighting in the filth domain for a long time. Not only did they consume a lot of energy, but they were also constantly on guard against the corrosion of the filth. Their situation was very difficult. If they were only facing a group of filth divine sea filth race, they wouldn't have been able to stop it. If they hadn't retreated quickly, there would have been casualties. Hearing him say this, Yu Yao of the filth Yu Yao, but they had to pay a price. Of course. The filthy race should have already used this method, but it was not to the extent that Rizhao could pass through, so the price they paid was not very high. It was still within an acceptable range. Su Yuan suddenly said slowly, Kid, once you kill this group of filth race people, they should take the initiative to retreat. The first wave of Yu Yao from the depraved race had been completely wiped out. Now, the depraved race had sent another batch of Yu Yao over. If they didn't achieve anything, the depraved race wouldn't be able to pose any threat to the Jade Conch race unless they forced Rizhao to descend. Yu Yao wouldn't do this if Jade Conch didn't show enough benefits. They had invaded many places in the starry sky and opened up more than one battlefield. Not every battlefield could be easily conquered, so the filth Yu Yao didn't have to take Jade Conch. The premise was that Jade Conch had to show enough strength to protect themselves. This is... Chou Wu looked at Yu Yao. Even with his peak Yu Yao cultivation, he couldn't see through the other party's strength. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. If he couldn't see through this person, then it must be Ri. From Indefinite Galaxy? But how could Lu Yi come so far to bring Ri from Indefinite Galaxy in less than a month? This is Elder Su Yuan. Lu Yi gave a simple introduction and didn't say too much. Led by Chou Wu, the group of Yu Yao immediately bowed. Chou Wu said, Thank you for your help, Elder. Jade Conch is very grateful. Su Yuan waved his hand and said, The filth race has a blood feud with our race. Although we helped you, it was also our race's revenge. There is no need to thank us. Chou Wu was stunned. May I ask Elder's race? He wasn't as knowledgeable as Ma Shangxi. Although he felt that Su Yuan and the others didn't seem like humans, he couldn't tell which race they were. The soul race. The soul race has the ability to possess souls. They can greatly increase the strength of the possessed person. Later, we will cooperate with the senior brothers and sisters of the soul race to kill the enemy, Lu Yi explained. Chou Wu and the others' eyes lit up. Although they had never heard of the soul race, the ability to possess souls was something incredible. How are you all? Lu Yi asked. Chou Wu said, We've mostly recovered. They retreated and didn't take the initiative to attack. 10 days was enough for them to fully recover. Then let's do it. Lu Yi knew that this matter couldn't be delayed. He turned to the many soul race Yu Yao behind Su Yuan and said, Thank you, senior brothers and sisters. One of the soul race Yu Yao smiled and said, It is our duty to fight the enemy together. Lu Ye's expression turned serious. He looked at Chou Wu and the others and said, Please don't resist. Just relax. Although they didn't understand, they still did as they were told. In the next moment, the soul tribes Yu Yao pounced on the Jade Conch's Yu Yao one after another. In the blink of an eye, all the soul tribes Yu Yao disappeared. On the other hand, the Jade Conch's members were all shocked. The soul race's possession technique could greatly enhance the possessed person's strength. This kind of enhancement was comprehensive. Although it wouldn't increase the user's cultivation, it was close enough. The Jade Conch Yu Yao felt that with their current state, they would have no problem fighting above their cultivation level. Ma Shangxi's expression was particularly interesting. He never imagined that as a blood race member he would one day be able to cooperate with the soul race. Lu Yi had experience being possessed before, but at that time, both he and Li Shang were only late-stage constellation realm cultivators. Now, he was at the early-stage Yu Yao realm, and the one who possessed him was the one who had spoken just now. She was at the late-stage Yu Yao realm. This sudden surge in strength made Lu Yi feel like his body was overflowing with energy that could be released. And this was only the late-stage Yu Yao possessing him. If Su Yuan were to possess him, of course, this idea wasn't very practical. The stronger the soul race was, the more pressure the possessed person would have to endure. Yu Yao cultivators could only withstand the soul race's possession. If Su Yuan were to use the possession technique on Lu Yi wouldn't be able to withstand it. Fellow Taoist Lu, if you feel any pressure, just tell me. The soul race Yu Yao's voice sounded in his mind. Lu Yi nodded. I'm fine. His physique had already reached the pinnacle of the constellation stage, and he had already manifested his own flower of the body. In terms of his divine sense, he also had the rainbow divine lotus. As such, Lu Yi didn't feel much pressure when Yu Yao possessed his body. If it were any other early stage Yu Yao, they definitely wouldn't be as relaxed as him. Let's go, Lu Yi said softly as he stared at the filthy ground. Cho Wu also shouted, everyone, follow me to kill the enemy. At his command, Cho Wu took the lead and charged forward. A group of Yu Yao and Yu Conches followed closely behind, charging forward bravely. This was a battle to protect their homeland. There was no way out. If they lost this battle, Yu Conches wouldn't have a good ending. Even though they had to face more Yu Yao than last time, everyone was full of confidence. Last time, even without the soul race's help, they could still wipe out the enemy. This time, with the soul race possessing them, there was no reason for them to lose. The battle instantly erupted. Just the aftermath of the battle between Yu Yao and Yu Yao wasn't something the Divine Sea's Filth Tribe could withstand. Of course, the Constellation Filth Tribe could withstand it, but they couldn't interfere in the battle. Battles broke out all over the battlefields. The Yu Yao of the Filth Tribe were shocked to discover that their enemies were different this time. They'd fought Cho Wu and the others when they charged out of the insect path, so they naturally knew Yu Yao and Yu Yao's strengths. However, the Yu Yao of the Jade Conch clan had all become much more powerful in this clash. Not only that, but during the clash, the Yu Yao of the Jade Conch clan were also bombarded with soul techniques. As a result, the Yu Yao of the Filth clan felt immense pressure in just a single clash. If they hadn't outnumbered the Yu Yao, they would have been at a disadvantage. Lu Ye's side was already facing off against a mid-stage Yu Yao star beast Filth. This Filth didn't have any consciousness and was in a state of enslavement. He knew that if he wanted to win this battle, he had to reduce the enemy's numbers. Given the Jade Conch's current state, as long as their numbers were about the same, they would definitely have the upper hand. That was why he'd targeted this Filth immediately. It was easier to kill a mindless enemy. With Yu Yao's late-stage soul race possessing them and Lu Ye's own strength, it wasn't difficult to kill this Filth. Yu Yao was like an octopus, its thick tentacles sweeping across. Many of the Divine Sea's Filth Tribe members who couldn't dodge in time were torn to shreds. Lu Yi easily dodged its attack and landed on top of its head. As his magic power surged, a great sun exploded and enveloped the Filth. Filthy blood splattered. The Filth roared and swept its huge tentacles above its head. Lu Yi had no intention of dodging at all. He raised his long saber and slashed at one of the tentacles. With the support of the divine blade, the huge tentacle was cut open like tofu. Driven by inertia, it flew far away. The saber light kept flashing. In just 2 short breaths, all of the Filth's tentacles were cut off, leaving only an oval body. Filthy blood flowed from the wound. Instinctively, fear flashed in its eyes. A huge saber light suddenly attacked from the front. When Lu Ye's figure flashed past, the Filth had already been cut in half. After killing an enemy, Lu Yi rushed to the nearest battlefield without stopping. Outside the Filth domain, Su Yuan, who had restrained his aura, raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw this scene. He suddenly realized that Lu Ye's strength was a little abnormal. Cold, fever, discomfort, heaviness in the head and light footing. Chapter 1715. Although Lu Yi was possessed by a late-stage Yu Yao, he had only recently ascended to the Yu Yao realm. Such a combination should be able to kill a mid-stage Yu Yao, but it shouldn't be so easy. However, in Su Yuan's opinion, Lu Yi didn't need to expend much effort to kill the filthy star beast at all. He finished the battle in just a few breaths of time. This kid seems to be quite amazing. As Su Yuan thought to himself, Lu Yi had already charged into Ma Shangxi's sea of blood. Now that her opponent had been dealt with, what she needed to do next was naturally to help the other Yu Yao on her side open up the situation and continuously expand her advantage. Ma Shangxi was the best choice. His sea of blood technique could create a huge geographical advantage for his side. Moreover, he was one of the only two peak Yu Yao, so it was most cost-effective to start from his side. Lu Yi had done the same during the previous battle with the filthy race, and it was the same this time. The master and servant had worked together before, so Ma Shangxi immediately knew what Lu Yi was planning to do when he sensed that he had charged into his sea of blood. There were 3 Yu Yao auras in the sea of blood, and all of them were late-stage Yu Yao. They were currently locked in a fierce battle with Ma Shangxi. Ma Shangxi would undoubtedly be under a lot of pressure if he were alone, but with the Yu Yao's possession, he didn't feel any pressure at all. Instead, he felt like he could handle the situation with ease. He had long heard that the Yu Yao's possession technique was extremely mysterious and could greatly increase a cultivator's strength. However, the blood race had never had the chance to try it. He never imagined that he would have such an opportunity. He was probably the first blood race member in the world to be possessed by a Yu Yao. The pressure on Ma Shangxi's side wasn't great to begin with, so when Lu Yi arrived, Ma Shangxi had an even easier time. He fully activated the Sea of Blood's power to assist Lu Yi. Moments later, one of the filthy Yu Yao's auras died in the Sea of Blood. After dealing with one filthy Yu Yao, Lu Ye's consciousness immediately locked onto the second one. This was a member of the stone race. His entire body glowed with a stone luster. He was tall and well-defined, and at first glance, he looked like he was made of stone. Lu Yi had a deep impression of this race. Back when he was at the Alpha Origin stage, he had fought against a member of the stone race called Baosher. There was only one word that could describe Baosher's strength. Looking at the entire starry skies, if the stone race claimed to be second in terms of physical defense, no other race would dare claim to be first. Not only that, but they were also born with boundless strength. In addition to their powerful physiques, they could be said to be natural body cultivators. In certain battlefields, they were most suited for attacking. In the starry sky, although the Stone Clan was not considered a large clan, their overall strength was not weak. They had their own top realm and there were many experts in the clan. With Ma Shangxi's assistance, Lu Yi easily made his way to the Stone Clan member's side. Before he could react, Lu Yi had already slashed down with his mountain plate blade. Lu Ye's blade slashed into the other's back, and the immense force caused the Stone Tribe member to stagger. However, Lu Yi frowned slightly. This was because the effect of the slash was much worse than expected. As expected of the Stone race, who were known for their defensive abilities. Even the Mountain Pan Blade, which was imbued with the divine edge, only left a wound of less than a foot on his back. It was also very shallow. The Stone Tribe member roared in pain and turned around. Just as he was about to throw a punch, invisible spirit power surged forward, causing the Stone Tribe member's movements to falter. Yu Yao, who was possessing Lu Ye's body, had made her move. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Ye's blade danced in the air. Blade light flashed, and wound after wound appeared on the Stone Tribe member's body. In a battle between experts, life and death were separated by a fine line. If it were any other race, that brief moment of delay would have been enough to cost them their lives. However, although the Stone Tribe member was injured, he was not seriously injured. After breaking free from the spirit race's spirit technique, the punch finally landed. Lu Yi retreated, only to feel the violent fist force wrapped in ferocious transcendence energy sweeping toward him like a gust of wind. It scraped against his skin, causing him to feel pain. His entire body was pushed back several miles in the sea of blood. Ma Shangxi's blood-binding technique had no effect on the Stone Tribe member. This was because the Stone Tribe was one of the rare races that didn't have blood. It could be said that the Stone Tribe members were very effective against certain techniques of the Blood Tribe. Ma Shangxi was clearly aware of this, so she didn't spend much effort on the Stone Tribe member. She handed it over to Lu Yi while she focused on the other late-stage Yu Yao. After exchanging a few blows, Lu Yi realized just how powerful the Stone Tribe member was. From the looks of it, he would have to tear it apart if he wanted to deal with it. However, considering how tough the Stone Tribe member's body was, Lu Yi felt that it was best not to waste time on it. It wouldn't be too late to deal with this tough bone after dealing with the easier ones first. However, the injured Stone Tribe member was clearly enraged. Its divine sense locked onto Lu Ye's position, and it traversed the sea of blood to come at him. Lu Yi didn't want to tangle with it. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something. In the next instant, he used a leaping technique to meet the Stone Tribe member head-on. In the blink of an eye, the two figures collided. Lu Yi dodged the Stone Tribe member's attack while slashing down with his mountain blade. But this time, the Pan-Shan saber suddenly burst into flames, as if it was burning. The long blade accurately landed on the Stone Tribe member's chest, leaving only a shallow wound. However, the effect of this slash was vastly different from before. Previously, when he was injured, the Stone Clan member did not have much of a reaction at all. However, when the blade came down, he seemed to have suffered a huge impact. His tall figure froze for a moment, and then he roared in pain. He instinctively wanted to counterattack, but the Soul Tribe member's soul technique was executed at just the right moment. It attacked his soul, causing his movements to stagnate for a moment. During this moment, Lu Ye's second slash had already landed. The scene became comical. The Stone Tribe member seemed to have turned into a marionette, his movements sluggish. In this situation, he had no way of fighting back against Lu Ye's frenzied attacks. This was the strength of the Soul Tribe. They could use soul possession techniques to attach themselves to other cultivators. Not only could it greatly increase the strength of the possessed cultivator, but the Soul Tribe member could also use soul techniques to attack their enemies. This wasn't a simple joint attack, but a deeper level of cooperation. Unless the Stone Tribe member could resist the Soul Tribe member's soul technique, this was a dead end. But in the entire Starry Sky, which race could resist a Soul Tribe member of the same realm in terms of soul cultivation? If it were any other race, the situation might be better, but for a race like the Stone Tribe member who was born with a powerful physique, their soul was destined to be a weakness. The Stone Tribe member roared continuously. He seemed to be enduring great torment and pain. His body was covered in wounds. However, these wounds weren't enough to take his life. Lu Yi didn't come with the intention of taking his life. Just now, he had a flash of inspiration and thought of a possibility. Everything he was doing now was just a test. After 10 breaths, there was almost no intact part of the Stone Tribe member's body. But strangely, the Stone Tribe member no longer roared and roared. Instead, there was a fierce struggle in his eyes. Moreover, the originally thick, filthy power on his body had become incomparably thin. Until a certain moment, he suddenly stood still and stopped chasing Lu Yi. Instead, he clenched his fists and his body trembled violently, as if he was fighting against something. Lu Yi stood not far away from him and watched with rapt attention. A look of expectation flashed in his eyes. After 3 breaths, the Stone Tribe member suddenly looked up at Lu Yi and said in a buzzing voice, "I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist to slash a few more times." Lu Yi was overjoyed, knowing that his guess was right. These filthy tribe members who were eroded and transformed by the filthy power could be reversed. The Stone Tribe member in front of him was the best proof. He had never thought of this before because subconsciously he regarded all the filthy tribe members who invaded the star system as enemies he must kill. He didn't hold back at all during the battle. If this Stone Tribe member wasn't tough enough, he would have already been killed. But thinking about it carefully, the reason why the Stone Tribe member was transformed into a filthy tribe member was because of the erosion of the filthy power, and the power of the talent tree could incinerate the filthy power. So, if he used the power of the talent tree to incinerate the filthy power in these transformed filthy tribe members, what would happen? With this idea in mind, when Lu Yi fought with the Stone Tribe member just now, he poured the power of the talent tree into every slash. While injuring his opponent, he also incinerated the filthy power in his opponent's body. Now that the effect had appeared, the Stone Tribe member had undoubtedly recovered a part of his sanity. Not only did he not attack Lu Yi again, but he also asked him to slash a few more times. Clearly, he wanted to completely get rid of the filthy power. This was a breakthrough. Without the slightest hesitation, Lu Yi flashed forward and placed his hand on the Stone Tribe member's head. Activating the power of the talent tree, the Stone Tribe member began to tremble. The filth in his body was quickly incinerated, and the struggle and resistance in his eyes gradually dissipated, replaced by endless clarity and exhaustion. He completely recovered as if a lifetime had passed. He nodded slightly to Lu Yi. "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Lu Yi nodded. "We'll talk about it later." He had many things to ask the Stone Tribe member. He turned to look at Ma Shangxi and shouted, "Don't kill him." Since he could use the power of the talent tree to save these filthy tribe members, there was no need to kill them all. Keeping them alive was undoubtedly better than killing them all. As he spoke, Lu Yi rushed towards Ma Shangxi. There was still a late-stage Yu Yao here, but he was in a precarious situation. In a one-on-one fight, he was no match for Ma Shangxi, especially in a special environment like the Blood Sea. By the time Lu Yi arrived, the master and servant worked together and easily suppressed the filth race being. The Blood Sea turned into a cage, rendering the late-stage filth race being unable to resist. Lu Yi flashed to the filth race being's side and pressed his hand on the filth race being's body, activating the power of his talent tree. The filthy power was incinerated, but the result made Lu Yi frown. This was because the situation was different from what he had expected. As the filthy power in the filthy tribe member's body was incinerated, the filthy tribe member also lost his vitality, leaving behind only his physical body. Chapter 1716. Ma Shangxi didn't disturb Lu Yi and only stood guard beside him. Everything in the Blood Sea was under his perception, so he was very clear about the changes in the Stone Clan. He was very shocked by the magic of his holy master's methods. However, he couldn't understand the situation in front of him. "What's going on?" Ma Shangxi asked. The Stone Clan had been reversed, so it didn't make sense for the Filth Clan to die. If there was a difference between the two, it would be the difference in their minds. From the Filth Clan he had met so far, they were divided into two types. One was those who didn't have a mind and only acted on instinct, and the other was those who still had a mind. Most of the Filth Clan belonged to the former type, and the latter was only a small portion. The former was basically driven by the latter. The Stone Clan was the type that still had a mind, while the dead Filth Clan member was the type that didn't have a mind. Lu Yi guessed that this was the reason why the two Filth Clansmen had different fates after being burned by him. Don't waste your energy on these Filth Clan members. Their minds have been obliterated by the filth and have been completely replaced by filth. So even if you save them, they will only leave behind a shell. The Stone Clan member who was saved by Lu Yi just now walked over and looked at the dead Filth Clan member in front of him with a sense of sadness. Lu Yi understood and turned to look at him. So only the Filth Clan members who still have a mind can be saved? Just like the Stone Clan member in front of him, he still had a mind of his own after being eroded by the filth for so many years. That was why there was a possibility of saving him. I can only say that there is a chance. The Stone Clan member nodded. Lu Yi immediately knew what to do. He looked at the Stone Clan member and said, "Do you still have the strength to fight?" The Stone Clan member's injuries weren't serious. His skin was rough and his flesh was thick, so he looked terrible. In fact, they were only minor injuries that couldn't be healed due to the obstruction of the Fang power. Now that they were no longer enemies, Lu Yi dispelled the Fang power on his wounds and he would recover soon. His problem was that his divine soul was unstable. The method used by the Soul Clan member who possessed Lu Ye's body had a great impact on the Stone Clan member's divine soul, so he looked a little dispirited at the moment. "Although I'm not at the peak, it's not that easy to die." The Stone Clan member replied in a muffled voice. Lu Yi nodded and turned to look at Ma Shangxi. The latter understood tacitly and drove the sea of blood towards the nearest battlefield. At this moment, almost all of the Yu Yao of the Jade Conches were outnumbered, but the battle was still evenly matched. After being possessed by the Soul Tribe, the Yu Yao of the Jade Conches experienced the feeling of their strength skyrocketing. The only problem was the erosion of the power of filth, so they couldn't fight for a long time. They could only think of ways to create an opening as soon as possible. However, before they could succeed, they saw the sea of blood spreading toward them. When they thought of the 2 moon jade late-stage auras that had withered away, how could they not know that Lu Yi and his servant had made another breakthrough? The situation was almost exactly the same as last time. Even the Yu Yao from Jade Conch felt embarrassed. The rest of the battle was simple. Wherever Ma Shangxi's sea of blood spread, death would follow. Originally, when he and Lu Yi worked together, Yu Yao of the filth race would find it difficult to resist. Now that Yu Yao was a late-stage stone race cultivator, they naturally had an easier time breaking through the situation. The defilements were killed one by one, and their advantage was gradually increasing. Lu Yi set his eyes on another defilement race cultivator. This was a human. Lu Yi didn't know which realm he came from, but he was also a weapon cultivator just like Lu Yi. The reason why Lu Yi had set his eyes on him was because, like the stone race cultivator, he was one of the rare few who still had a sense of reason. According to the stone race cultivator, the defilements who had no sense of reason had their wills erased by the power of filth. Thus, even if Lu Yi burned away the filth in their bodies, he wouldn't be able to save them. However, this human was different. As long as he burned away the filth in his body, he would be able to return to his original state. That was what Lu Yi thought. However, the final result was completely different from what he had expected. With Ma Shangxi's help, he completely burned away the filth in this human weapon cultivator's body. However, the human still died. Lu Yi was a little confused as to what was going on. The battle drew to a close. After a short while, the final Yu Yao of the defilements was killed. Although there were still many low-level defilements left in the domain of filth, these small fries naturally posed no threat to Lu Ye's group. Just as Lu Yi and the others were about to deal with these defilements, the void suddenly trembled. Everyone was bewildered. When they looked in the direction of the disturbance, they discovered that the insect path was rapidly shrinking. A Yu Yao cried out in surprise, "The defilements are retreating." The disappearance of the insect path was undoubtedly a clear indication of the defilement's attitude. They had sent 2 batches of about 34 Yu Yao to this place, but all of them had been killed. The Jade Conch galaxy had demonstrated enough ability to protect itself. Unless the defilements forcibly activated the power of the heavenly frost mirror to stabilize the insect path and allow sunlight to descend, there was no way they could conquer the Jade Conch galaxy. Before they realized that there were enough benefits to be gained here, the defilements wouldn't do so easily. This was because if they did, they would have to pay a huge price. A few dozen Yu Yao was a considerable force anywhere, but to the defilements, it was nothing. Thus, they were willing to bear such losses. This was the fundamental reason why they were willing to retreat. Simply put, this kind of conquering method had always been used by the defilements. The Jade Conch galaxy was not the first galaxy they had encountered setbacks in, and it definitely wouldn't be the last. Not every battlefield opened by the defilements ended in victory. This kind of failure was nothing to them. The Yu Yao were overjoyed. Around the defilement domain, the constellations were also cheering. Their tense nerves finally relaxed after more than a month. Lu Yi also let out a long sigh of relief. If the defilement still didn't retreat, it would be troublesome. As long as the insect path was here, he couldn't leave. Fortunately, the current outcome was not bad. There was no need to worry about the defilements coming back. The heavenly frost mirror's location was random. After experiencing this once, it was basically impossible for the Jade Conch galaxy to experience it again in a short period of time. Unless their luck was particularly bad, they could only blame it on their bad luck. In less than half an hour, the huge insect path completely disappeared, leaving behind only the defilement domain. The low-level defilements in the domain were all killed by the Yu Yao. Everyone retreated, leaving Lu Yi alone to purify the area. Lu Yi busied himself for a while, purifying all the filth here before returning. The group of Jade Conch Yu Yao led by Cho Wu bowed in unison and thanked Lu Yi. Everyone knew that if it weren't for Lu Yi, the Jade Conch galaxy wouldn't have had a good ending. In the first battle, Lu Yi and his servant played a crucial role in killing all the Yu Yao of the defilements. In the second battle, Lu Yi brought a group of Soul Tribe reinforcements. Otherwise, the Yu Yao of the Jade Conch Galaxy alone wouldn't have been a match. Moreover, Lu Yi used miraculous methods to purify the defilement domain in both battles. This undoubtedly resolved the hidden danger completely. Although Lu Yi was also from the Jade Conch Galaxy, this location was too close to the Jade Conch Galaxy. When the defilements invaded, the Jade Conch Galaxy would bear the brunt. You're too kind, Sector Lord Cho. I'm also a cultivator of this galaxy. It's my duty to protect my home. Of course, if you really want to thank me, give me a fire-type treasure. Purifying the filth will consume a lot of energy. Cho Wu hurriedly took out 2 storage rings. Everything is ready. Lu Yi had ordered the Jade Conch Galaxy to collect fire-type treasures before he left. The Jade Conch Galaxy naturally didn't dare to neglect and immediately began collecting them with the power of the entire Jade Conch Galaxy. Originally, Lu Yi wanted to give them to him when he returned, but the battle was about to begin, so he didn't have time. Lu Yi happily took the 2 storage rings and scanned them with his divine sense. He knew that the talent tree fuel he consumed this time could be replenished, and he even made some profit. On the other side, Su Yuan was asking the Stone Tribe about some things. He wanted to find out more about the defilements, such as the location of the defilements. Unfortunately, although the Stone Tribe was rescued by Lu Yi, he didn't know much about the defilements because he didn't know the exact location of the defilements. Back then, after he was corroded by the filth and turned into a defilement, he entered the defilements through the insect path. Although he participated in many wars, he entered and exited through the insect path, so he really didn't know the exact location of the defilements. However, according to him, the defilements had as many experts as there were clouds. There were plenty of sunshine and countless Yu Yao, so the death of a few dozen Yu Yao was nothing to the defilements. Moreover, a defilement like him couldn't be considered a true defilement. There were naturally pure defilements in the defilements. There weren't many of them, but each of them was extremely powerful. Even he had never seen a pure defilement before. After chatting for a while, the information he obtained from the Stone Tribe was very limited. Su Yuan felt rather helpless. He pondered for a moment and beckoned to Lu Yi. Lu Yi hurriedly walked forward. "Elder, what are your orders?" Su Yuan waved his hand and isolated the surroundings with pure divine sense power. He stared at Lu Yi for a while and hesitated before saying, "That Ma Shangxi, is he a blood race member?" Ma Shangxi had no flaws when he transformed into a human, so even Su Yuan couldn't see any clues. However, the soul race had Yu Yao use a soul possession technique on Ma Shangxi, so they vaguely saw through Ma Shangxi's background and reported this matter to Su Yuan. Lu Yi didn't hide anything and nodded. "Yes, he is a blood race member." Su Yuan frowned. "Little friend, your future is boundless. The blood race's reputation isn't very good, so it's best if you don't get too involved with them." He didn't ask why Lu Yi was so close to a blood race member. Everyone had their own experiences and secrets, but as an elder, Su Yuan still had to remind Lu Yi. Sensing Su Yuan's concern, Lu Yi said, "Elder, don't worry, I know what to do." Chapter 1717. Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi's relationship wasn't a simple friendship, but rather a master-servant relationship. Ma Shangxi was his blood servant, and this kind of connection couldn't be severed unless Ma Shangxi died. Lu Yi wasn't worried about being affected by the blood race's reputation. Ma Shangxi's disguise was very powerful, and even Su Yuan couldn't see through it. Unless he actively exposed his blood race identity, there wouldn't be much of a problem. The soul race was only able to see through his disguise because Yu Yao had used a soul possession technique on him. Su Yuan spoke again. "There's one more thing you have to keep in mind, little friend." Lu Yi said seriously, "Please speak, elder." "Just now, you purified the filth and reversed the filth race. Try not to expose them in front of too many people. You should also tell the people here not to leak the news." Lu Yi was puzzled. Su Yuan sighed. "Your methods are taboo for the filthy race. If they learn of your existence, they might have some thoughts they shouldn't have. In short, it's best to be careful. Lu Yi thought about it carefully and found that Su Yuan was right. It was one thing for him to use his talent tree to purify the filth, but medical cultivators could also do the same. It was just a lot less efficient, but reversing the reversal of the filthy race was a bit unthinkable. It would be fine if the filthy race didn't know about this, but if they did, they would definitely view Lu Yi as a thorn in their side. Being targeted by such a huge monster hiding in the dark, his future days would not be easy. I understand. Lu Yi nodded. The soul race didn't stay here for long. The filthy race had already retreated, and the insect path had also disappeared. There was nothing else for them to do now. After chatting with Lu Yi for a while, Su Yuan led the soul race's Yu Yao back home. Lu Yi wasn't in a hurry to leave. After all, there were many things he had to deal with after the battle. There was also the stone race member he had rescued. Lu Yi wanted to talk to him. The Jade Conch realm hadn't suffered many losses in the battle with the filthy race. None of the Yu Yao race members had died, and the star constellation realm had lost some people, but not many. Even though there was no danger here after the insect path disappeared, the Jade Conch realm still arranged for people to stay here and monitor the situation. 10 days later, in the Jade Conch realm, Lu Yi and Bai Dang were sitting across from each other. Bai and was the name of the member of the Stone clan that he had saved. In 10 days, with the help of the soul jade that Lu Yi had given him, his damaged divine soul had completely recovered. Under normal circumstances, Bai An's body was huge. However, at this moment, his body had turned into the size of a normal human. Clearly, this was a secret technique. Today, Bai An came to find Lu Yi to express his gratitude. After all, if it weren't for Lu Ye's miraculous methods, he would still be under the command of the filth race and fighting everywhere. Who knows when he would die somewhere? Such kindness is like a new life. I am extremely grateful. But now, he could only be grateful. There was nothing he could give in return. Lu Yi didn't care about this. It was just an accident that he saved Tao Wu. Initially, he just wanted to use the talent tree's power to kill the filth tribe more easily. Who knew that Tao Wu would recover as they fought? Moreover, in the later campaign, Bai Si also contributed a lot. What do you plan to do next? Lu Yi asked. Bai An thought for a moment and said, I want to go back to the 5-color domain. I haven't been back for too many years. I don't know if I still have relatives. The 5-color domain was the only top domain occupied by the Stone clan. It was famous in the entire starry sky. Bai An was born in the 5-color domain. Many years ago, when he went out to travel and passed through the starry sky, he was inadvertently involved in the invasion of the filth race. He couldn't bear to see the creatures of that galaxy being slaughtered, so he took the initiative to join the battlefield. However, when he wanted to escape, it was already too late. Thus, he entered the filth race and became a member of the filth race. Over the years, he fought for the filth race everywhere. Now that he suddenly looked back, he was full of guilt and uneasiness. After wandering outside for so many years, it was normal for him to want to go back to his homeland to take a look. I wonder if you know how to go to the 5-color domain from here? Bai An asked. He had come here today to express his gratitude to Lu Yi in person and to inquire about the way back. Lu Yi shook his head. This galaxy is relatively remote. More than 10 years ago, we didn't even have the ability to communicate with the outside world. Therefore, I don't know where the 5-color domain is. Bai An was not disappointed when he heard this. He had expected this situation. If there was no correct way, then he could only take one step at a time. However, if he wanted to return to the 5-color domain, there would be many twists and turns, and he didn't know how much time it would take. Although I don't know where the 5-color domain is, I'm going to the Wanxiang galaxy. If you're willing, you can come with me. There should be a worm passage connected to the 5-color domain in the Wanxiang galaxy, Lu Yi said. The reason why he said this was because Lu Yi knew that there was a spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea that was occupied by the Stone clan. Since that was the case, the Stone clan must have a convenient way to enter and exit the Wanxiang galaxy. Even if there was no worm passage directly connected to the 5-color domain, there should be such a worm passage in the nearby galaxies. Otherwise, the Stone clan wouldn't have been able to enter the Wanxiang Sea on such a large scale. Anne's eyes lit up when he heard this. That's great. Once we reach the Wanxiang Galaxy, it will be much easier to return to the 5-color domain. Then you should get ready. I'll set off in a few days. And thanked him and stood up to leave. However, after taking a few steps, he suddenly turned his head and said seriously, "Fellow Lu, I'll remember your kindness of giving me a new life. I won't tell anyone about the battle with the Filthy clan." Lu Yi was stunned and then nodded slightly. And probably didn't hear Su Yuan's and his advice, but the method to reverse the Filthy clan situation was really incredible. And obviously knew the importance of this matter, so he deliberately expressed his stance to Lu Yi, telling him that he would keep his mouth shut and would never reveal anything to anyone. From this, it could be seen that although and looked simple and honest, his mind was very flexible. In truth, Lu Yi had thought about trying to rope in After all, he was at the late stage of the Moon Jade tribe. No matter where he went, he wouldn't be considered weak. However, the Stone tribe wasn't a tribe without backing, and he was different from Ma Shangxi. Simply trying to rope him in wouldn't work. 2 days later, Lu Ye's preparations were complete and he was about to set off. He came to Jade Conch with the intention of bringing another group of Jade Conch cultivators to the Wanxiang Sea. However, he spent a lot of time forging the scabbard of the Panshan saber and encountered the Filthy clan's invasion. As a result, he was delayed for a few months. Jade Conch was very interested in sending more people to the Wanxiang Sea. If it wasn't for the accident with the Heavenly Frost Chill, this matter would have been settled long ago. It was not too late now. This time, Jade Conch domain only sent 100 constellations, just like Qin Li Dao domain. However, Jade Conch also sent a Yu Yao. This was Lu Ye's suggestion. The rule of the Wanxiang Sea was that non-locals were not allowed to stay on the Wanxiang Sea for long. When Big Luo Xie escorted the fleet to the Wanxiang Galaxy, he left in a hurry after a few days on the Wanxiang Sea. He had to leave. If he exceeded the time limit, it would be a provocation to the local forces of the Wanxiang Galaxy. The Wanxiang Galaxy's sunshine would definitely come out and deal with him. Therefore, Luo Xie could only experience the vastness of the Wanxiang Sea in a hurry to broaden his horizons. This rule was mainly set by the Wanxiang Galaxy for the convenience of management. The environment of the Wanxiang Sea was too complicated. Who knew how many forces from different galaxies were stationed here? Many forces had Rizhao behind them. If one force came to stay, another force came to stay. The local forces of the Wanxiang Galaxy would not be able to manage it. Therefore, such a rule was set. Simply put, it was fine if you came to take a look. Leave as soon as you saw it. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude. This was only one of the rules of the Wanxiang Sea. The other rule was that each force could only have 5 Yu Yao at most. As for the constellations, there was no limit to the number. This was because no matter how many constellations there were, their strength was only SOSO. They could not cause too much trouble on the Wanxiang Sea. This rule was also set by the Wanxiang Sea for the sake of better management. The competition between the Yu Yao and the constellations was different. If there were too many Yu Yao stationed in the Wanxiang Sea, it would cause a huge commotion. If there were only 5 Yu Yao, there would be a limit no matter how big the commotion was. These were the 2 rules that every force had to abide by if they wanted to survive in the Wanxiang Sea. It was also a rule that everyone tacitly agreed upon. Since ancient times, no force had dared to violate it. Because of the second rule of the Wanxiang Sea, Lu Yi suggested that the Jade Conch domain send another Yu Yao to accompany him. Lu Ye's initial plan was to have the Jade Conch domain send out 2 Yu Yao. This was because the 3-world island only had 2 Yu Yao on the surface, Luan Xiaoa and Tang Jun. Although the Mermaid clan could help at a critical moment, the Mermaid clan was still a special race. Lu Yi did not want to expose their existence as long as he could, lest others coveted them. Now that he had a Yu Yao, there were 3 of them. If he had not coincidentally subdued Ma Shangxi, the Jade Conch domain could indeed send out 2 more Yu Yao. However, now that Ma Shangxi was here, the Jade Conch domain only had 1 slot left. He Baichuan was the candidate chosen by the Jade Conch domain this time. A late-stage Yu Yao was in the prime of his life. Moreover, he was an individual cultivator. There was no doubt that he was very suitable. The last time the Jade Conch domain worked with Lu Yi, they had some misgivings because Lu Yi himself did not come to the Jade Conch domain. Only Wu Zhuo had gone. Although they had some misgivings, the Jade Conch domain was still very interested in the Wanxiang Sea. That was why Luan Xiaoa, a peak Yu Yao, had led 100 constellations to follow Lu Yi to the Wanxiang Sea. Now that everyone had experienced the battle against the Filth tribe together, the Jade Conch domain's Yu Yao had not only vaguely glimpsed Lu Ye's great potential, but also confirmed that there was a sunshine expert behind Lu Yi. Therefore, they were eager to cooperate with him. The Jade Conch domain gladly agreed to Lu Ye's suggestion. Chapter 17-18. In the Jade Conch world, Lu Yi opened the door to the Little Flower world. The 100 constellations of the Jade Conch world entered under He Baichuan's lead. And also entered before Lu Yi closed the door. Junior brother Lu, please take care of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Over at the Jade Conch world, the realm lord Chou Wu led the way. Lu Yi nodded. The 3 realms are one. Don't worry, realm lord. With his hands behind his back, Wu Zhuo looked at Lu Yi and said, when we reach the 10,000 Elephant Sea, tell old Tang to come back immediately. He was still thinking about going to the 10,000 Elephant Sea personally. Tang Jun, an old man with no ambitions, was guarding there. It was better for him to work hard. At least, he had room for improvement. Lu Yi nodded and cupped his fists. Everyone please stay. He stepped onto the star boat. Ma Shangxi activated his magic power and rushed into the starry sky. After the star boat disappeared from their sight, everyone retracted their gazes. Wu Zhuo did not stay here for long. Although there was no danger in the Green Dawn Dao world, it was different with Yu Yao guarding it. What if some stupid star beast came to disturb the realm? He had to go back and watch over the place. On the star boat, Lu Yi sat cross-legged and cultivated. Ma Shangxi focused on steering and rushed to the place where they came from. Ma Shangxi kept the star boat. Lu Yi used the Little Flower world to put him away. He used the Rainbow Divine Lotus to connect to the Soul Race's ancestral land. Soon, Lu Yi appeared on the Lotus land where the starry pond was. Su Yuan sat there leisurely. He looked up at Lu Yi and asked, "Is everything settled?" The last few times Lu Yi came, he would check on the situation. Now, he was too lazy to do so. No one else could enter and leave the Soul Race's ancestral land so frequently except for Lu Yi. Lu Yi responded, "Yes, it's done." Su Yuan nodded and did not stand up. "Go where you want to go." "Thank you, elder." Lu Yi did not stand on ceremony and went straight to the starry pond. It was difficult to find the 9 states with the help of the starry pond because Su Yuan did not know the exact location of the 9 states. He had never been to the nearby starry wonders, so he could not pinpoint a location. However, going to the 10,000 Elephant Sea was different. Such a famous wonder in the starry sky could be easily found even in the starry sky pool. It didn't take long for Lu Yi to locate the myriad Elephant Sea. Using it as a starting point, he quickly found the location where Li Shang had brought him back to the Soul Race's ancestral land. This place was also the closest place to the myriad phenomenon sea where one could enter the Soul Race's ancestral land. "Elder, I'll be going then." Lu Yi turned his head and said. Su Yuan merely waved his hand. Lu Yi pounced towards the starry sky pond, his spiritual sense locking onto that direction. After a moment of dizziness, Yang Kai came back to his senses and found himself in the middle of a starry sky. Looking around, Yang Kai examined the nearby stars and confirmed that he had not come to the wrong place. This was the place where Li Shang had brought him last time. Cangyue Galaxy. This galaxy had a direct connection to the Wanxiang Galaxy. He opened the door to the small flower realm and let Ma Shangxi out. Then, he ordered him to summon his star boat and briefly identify the direction before giving him directions. The star boat flew across the starry sky toward the Wanxiang Galaxy. On the star boat, Ma Shangxi looked around suspiciously as he steered the boat. He wanted to say something several times but stopped himself. Seeing that Lu Yi was focused on cultivating, he didn't dare to disturb him. Suddenly, Lu Ye's voice rang out. Ask away if you have anything to ask. It was only then that Ma Shangxi asked, which galaxy is this, Holy Sovereign? He could vaguely feel that this was no longer the Jade Conch Galaxy because the environment felt different from the Jade Conch Galaxy. Therefore, he couldn't understand why the Holy Sovereign had come to another galaxy while he was in the Little Flower Realm. Sang Yue. Lu Yi replied simply. Ma Shangxi pondered for a moment and said in surprise, is this the Tsangyue Galaxy connected to the Wanxiang Galaxy? You know this galaxy? Lu Yi was surprised. It was true. Ma Shangxi was shocked. He laughed dryly and said, to be honest, Holy Sovereign, I spent some time in the Wanxiang Sea, so I know a little about the surrounding galaxies. Lu Yi had already guessed that Ma Shangxi had been to the Wanxiang Sea, so he wasn't surprised. However, it seemed that Ma Shangxi had spent a long time in the Wanxiang Sea. This made Lu Ye's heart sink. The blood breeds were too good at disguising themselves as humans. On the surface, there were no active blood breeds in the Wanxiang Sea, but who knew how many were hiding in the dark? The tragedy of the quiet moon star system back then was a bloody lesson. That Bai Jin of the blood race had managed to sneak into the sunshine star system without being exposed. At the critical moment, he stabbed the Four Corners star system and almost caused a catastrophe. It wasn't hard to imagine that there were many blood breeds in the Wanxiang Sea. Although he had the ability to identify them, he had to encounter them first. If he couldn't, there was nothing he could do. In comparison, the blood breeds were undoubtedly more difficult to deal with than the insect race. Lu Yi suddenly thought of something. He looked at Ma Shangxi and said, when we get there, I'll introduce you to someone. Teach him the art of disguise. As for Lan Qiyue, although she could also conceal the various characteristics of the blood clan and disguise herself as a human, her methods were obviously incomparable to Ma Shangxi's. Lu Yi had always been worried that she would accidentally expose her identity one day. Now that she had Ma Shangxi to teach her, there would not be any problems. Ma Shangxi was shocked. There are other blood warriors under Holy Sovereign's command? If not, why would he need to use the blood breed's disguise? He's not a blood warrior. You'll know when you see him, Lu Yi replied. Ma Shangxi didn't dare to ask any more questions and focused on steering the starboat. When they were about to reach the insect path, Lu Yi put Ma Shangxi into the Little Flower Realm. It wasn't that he was afraid of his identity being exposed, but that he had to pay a fee to pass through the insect path. Even if it wasn't much, he would save as much as he could. There was a huge floating continent beside the insect path. There was a palace on the floating continent. It was undoubtedly the place where Blue Moon Galaxy's Yu Yao resided. There was also a similar place on the other side of the insect path. When Lu Yi first came here, he spent some spirit jades to obtain a pass. The difficulty of entering the Blue Moon Galaxy was different from the difficulty of leaving the Blue Moon Galaxy. The last time he entered the Blue Moon Galaxy as a constellation, he was asked some questions. For example, his background, why he wanted to enter the Blue Moon Galaxy, and so on. This time, no one asked him anything. They just took some spirit jades and let him pass. The reason for this was naturally because the Thousand Elephant Galaxy was outside the insect path. No matter what Lu Yi wanted to do, it had nothing to do with Blue Moon. Even if he wanted to attack the Thousand Elephant Sea, Blue Moon wouldn't care. After exiting the insect path, he smoothly arrived at the Thousand Elephant Galaxy. Looking in the direction of the Thousand Elephant Sea, Lu Yi smiled slightly. After so long, he was finally back. Next, he had to work hard to improve his cultivation. Hun Ke had told him that with the seven-colored divine lotus, his divine soul would constantly grow. Therefore, his cultivation had to keep up. If his divine soul's foundation exceeded his cultivation level by too much one day, it would not end well for him. To others, this might be a little difficult. However, to Lu Yi, as long as he had enough talent tree fuel, improving his cultivation was not a problem at all. Therefore, this time, not only did he need to use the Thousand Elephant Sea to cultivate, but he also needed to develop the Three-World Island. Only with enough spirit jades could he cultivate without any worries. When he was in the Star Mansion, Lu Yi didn't feel much. However, now that Yu Yao was here and he was back in the Thousand Elephant Galaxy, Lu Yi could clearly sense that the cosmic energy here was denser than any other galaxy he had encountered. This was clearly because of the Thousand Elephant Sea. The denser cosmic energy meant that it would be easier to nurture spirit jades and spirit crystals. Therefore, many low-level cultivators who couldn't establish themselves in the Thousand Elephant Sea would search for spirit jades in the Thousand Elephant Galaxy to satisfy their cultivation needs. Of course, doing so came with risks. In the Thousand Elephant Galaxy, except for the regions near their own galaxy, there were all kinds of fierce fights. If one wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't even know how they died. Lu Yi steered the star boat a certain distance away from the Dark Moon Galaxy's insect path. Only then did he release Ma Shangxi. After thinking for a moment, he released Bai Dan. This is the Thousand Elephant Galaxy? Bai Dan was shocked. Lu Yi had stored him in a small world. It had only taken him 20 days to reach the Thousand Elephant Galaxy from the Jade Conch Galaxy in just 20 days. It was a little unbelievable. However, if the Jade Conch Galaxy was connected to the Thousand Elephant Galaxy through the insect path, then it made sense. Brother, we've arrived at the Thousand Elephant Galaxy. What are your plans? Lu Yi asked. Bai Dan thought for a moment and said, I want to return to the 5-color domain first. Lu Yi was not surprised by this. If he had been wandering outside for many years, he would have had the same thought. He immediately said, Then I wish you a safe journey. He rummaged through his storage ring and took out a star boat. Brother, take this. He had killed many members of the Divine Wind Pirate Gang, and this was one of the spoils of war. Bai Dan was stunned for a moment before he took the star boat. This is exactly what I need. I won't refuse. Then farewell. Lu Yi cupped his fists. Bai Dan returned the gesture. Thank you for taking care of me, Brother Lu. Don't mention it. Lu Yi nodded and called out to Ma Shangxi. The latter steered the star boat and flew toward the Thousand Elephant Sea. Brother Lu. Bai Dan suddenly called out from behind. Lu Yi turned around. If I come to the Thousand Elephant Sea again, where can I find you? The Three-World Island. Lu Yi waved his hand. After watching Lu Ye's star boat disappear into the distance, Bai Dan withdrew his gaze, turned around, and flew in another direction. There was a tunnel in that direction. Although it wasn't connected to the 5-color realm, it was connected to a neighboring galaxy. That galaxy was basically dependent on the 5-color domain. Therefore, as a member of the stone race, it was not difficult for him to pass through it. He had not returned for 1,000 years, and he was a little nervous. He did not know if his old friend was still there. On Lu Ye's star boat, he let He Baichuan out. He Baichuan was dazzled when he came to such a prosperous place from a remote place like the Jade Conch Galaxy. Chapter 1719. The Island of Versatility was the largest spiritual island in the Ocean of Versatility. It was located at the center of the Ocean of Versatility. It was one of the spiritual islands directly under the jurisdiction of the local star system, and was also the most valuable spiritual island. The famous Vientiane Chamber of Commerce was located on this top spiritual island. However, this did not mean that the Plenitude Chamber of Commerce was the only one on the Island of Versatility. Normally, a spiritual island that was open to all kinds of trade activities was divided into 2 parts. One part was for the cultivators and the other part was for trade. Just like the unparalleled island in the past, when Chu Shen made the plan, he actually followed this model. The same went for the Island of Versatility. Only 30% of the island was open to the public, while the remaining 70% was off-limits to outsiders. Within this area, many cultivators from the local galaxies had set up their own caves to cultivate. The mystical jade vein of the Island of Versatility was located within this area. At the same time, the Island of Versatility was the only spiritual island on the Ocean of Versatility that was guarded by sunshine experts. There were 5 of them. These sunshine experts were in charge of guarding the Ocean of Versatility. They did not usually show themselves, and were only used as a deterrent. In fact, there were not so many of them at first. At first, there were only 3 sunshine experts guarding the Island of Versatility, as 3 sunshine experts were enough. However, after Ma Bin snuck into the island of versatility and killed one of the 3 sunshine experts, the Wanxiang galaxy had increased the number of sunshine experts. They had no choice but to increase the number of sunshine experts as they did not feel safe. Now that 5 sunshine experts were gathered on the island of versatility, the same tragedy would not happen again. At this moment, on the island of versatility, a figure was waiting respectfully outside one of the sunshine experts' palaces. It was Tang Jun. Ordinary people were not allowed to enter this place. Tang Jun had paid a hefty price to be able to enter through a referral. As for why he was here, it was obviously to meet the sunshine expert in the palace. Although he was anxious, he did not show it on his face. It was unknown how long they had been waiting outside when a young man slowly walked out from the palace. This young man did not look old, and his face was pale without a beard. His cultivation was not considered high, only at the middle stage of the constellation realm. However, he had his hands behind his back, giving off the air of a boss. Seeing him walk out, Tang Jun, who had been waiting outside, hurriedly went up to him. With a smile on his face, he asked enthusiastically, "Brother Yuan, how was it?" The constellation that Tang Jun called Brother Yuan was called Yuan Cheng, and to have the qualifications to enter and leave such a place, his identity was obviously not ordinary. Yuan Cheng still had his hands behind his back. He glanced at Tang Jun and said with disgust, "What are you talking about? Who's your brother? Don't make me sound old." Tang Jun was stunned and continued to smile. My bad. It's fellow Taoist Yuan. I've been rude. Please forgive me." If this were any other place, Tang Jun, a mid-stage moon jade realm cultivator, calling a mid-stage constellation realm cultivator brother, would definitely be giving him face. However, since the other party was unwilling to listen to him, there was nothing Tang Jun could do. Furthermore, he had a favor to ask of the other party, so he could only continue acting humble. Yuan Cheng pointed at him and said in a tone of a father lecturing his son, "Be careful next time." Yes. Tang Jun couldn't help but nod his head. He didn't have the slightest bit of Yu Yao's spirit at all. He cautiously glanced into the palace and asked in a low voice, "Then what do you mean, Guardian Yuan?" The 5 Sunshine Realm cultivators overseeing this place were all guardians of the 10,000 creations sea. It wasn't a problem for Tang Jun to address them as such. Yuan Cheng shook his head. "I didn't see the elder ancestor. He's still in seclusion. Come again next time." Although he had expected this, Tang Jun still felt disappointed. He wasn't strong enough, so he couldn't even give out benefits. It was really awkward and sad. He forced a smile and asked, "Then when will Guardian Yuan come out of seclusion?" Yuan Cheng looked at him. "What? Since when does the elder ancestor have to report to you? Why don't you go in and ask him yourself?" As he spoke, he stepped aside. I wouldn't dare." Tang Jun was shocked. He hurriedly explained, "I'm just asking casually. I don't mean anything else. I've long heard of Guardian Yuan's great name. I just wanted to pay you a visit and listen to your teachings." Yuan Cheng snorted coldly. "There are countless Yu Yao on the 10,000 creations sea. If you want to listen to the elder ancestors' teachings, you'll have to see if you're qualified." Tang Jun gritted his teeth and took out a storage ring that he had prepared beforehand from his sleeve. He moved forward and stuffed it into Yuan Cheng's hand without a trace. Yuan Cheng turned his head and stared at him. "What are you doing?" Tang Jun smiled apologetically. "It's just a small token of my appreciation. I only hope that fellow Taoist Yuan can let me know when the Guardian comes out of seclusion. I'll pay you a visit again." As he spoke, he gently patted Yuan Cheng's hand. Yuan Cheng scanned the ring with his divine sense and knew that the weight in the ring was lighter. His expression softened slightly. He smiled and said, "No wonder people say that old people become shrewd. You're really good at dealing with people. All right, when the elder ancestor comes out of seclusion, I'll tell you." Tang Jun immediately showed a grateful expression. "Thank you very much, fellow Taoist." Then, he said, "Would it be convenient for you to leave a note imprint?" Yuan Cheng became impatient again. He waved his hand and said, "What's the point of leaving that thing? Go back. I'll send someone to inform you when the time comes." Tang Jun's expression darkened, but he quickly returned to normal. He didn't dare to insist, lest he offend the elder ancestor again. He nodded and said, "All right, then I'll return to the three-world island first. I'll wait for your good news." Although he knew that there wasn't much hope, he still deliberately mentioned the three-world island. He was afraid that if the elder ancestor really wanted to inform him of something, he couldn't find him. "Got it. Then I'll take my leave." Tang Jun cupped his fists and left in a carefree manner. As he walked out of the area, Tang Jun looked back and couldn't help but sigh. His face was full of worry. The three-world island? Where will it go from here? He didn't even get to see Nikitarace's face. He had spent a lot of spiritual jades in vain. Not only did he give Yuan Cheng spiritual jades, but he had also paid a lot of money to enter the area just now. He had begged many people to get the result. This was also because he saved up some connections when he was working on the Wushuang Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have this path. The three-world island was developing well. However, the better it developed, the greater the danger in a place like the Wanxiang Sea. He walked out of the Wanxiang Island absent-mindedly. He took out a note and sent a message to Luan Xiaoa. Soon there was a reply. "How is it? I didn't see him. He said he's in seclusion." Luan Xiaoa didn't understand. "Then Yuan Du is already in the sun reflection state. Why is he in seclusion? It's obvious that he doesn't want to see us." Tang Jun hit the nail on the head. The situation in the three-world island is still unclear. That's why Ri Guang won't make any decisions easily. If we want to see Yuan Du, we have to be strong enough and show that we have the ability to stabilize the three-world island. Luan Xiaoa said angrily, "If we have the ability to stabilize the three-world island, why would we ask him for help?" There was nothing wrong with what she said. If the three-world island's cultivators had the ability to stabilize the three-world island, they wouldn't need to ask for help. It was because they didn't have the ability that they needed to establish a relationship with Ri Guang and ask for his protection. Tang Jun said helplessly, "This is the general trend of the Wanxiang Sea." Luan Xiaoa was speechless for a long time before she replied, "Come back first. Be careful on the road." If it was in the past, Luan Xiaoa would look down on people like Tang Jun. However, after working with Tang Jun for so long, Luan Xiaoa saw Tang Jun's hard work. Naturally, she had a good impression of him. Especially in a place like the Wanxiang Sea. No matter what, Tang Jun was her family. Now that the situation was sensitive, she naturally had to warn Tang Jun. Tang Jun nodded. "I know. I've already disguised myself before I came." On the three-world island, Luan Xiaoa ended her message with Tang Jun. She frowned and her face was full of dissatisfaction. Before coming to the Wanxiang Sea, she never thought that the rules of survival in such a treasure land would be so complicated. In fact, when the three-world island was still developing, she didn't encounter any messy situations. Until recently, when the three-world island rose to prominence, all kinds of troubles came one after another. Fortunately, Tang Jun had experience. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to maintain the situation by herself. However, there were some things that couldn't be solved with experience. For cultivators, being powerful and having a strong foundation was always the biggest bargaining chip. What the three-world island lacked now was these. In conclusion, to establish a foothold on the Wanxiang Sea, one couldn't just plant a flag on any random spiritual island. One had to have the ability to establish a foothold. At the same time, one had to find a suitable backer. Luan Xiaoa frowned and pondered. She didn't know how to solve the problem. Just as she was feeling helpless, she suddenly sensed that the protective formation of the three-world island had been activated. She was shocked, subconsciously thinking that an enemy had come to attack. Recently, the three-world island had not been very peaceful, so it was normal for an enemy to attack. However, when she turned her head to look, she saw a familiar figure quickly approaching. Luan Xiaoa was stunned. Then, she hurriedly revealed a joyful expression. "Junior brother, you're back? Why didn't you send a message?" Lu Yi stood in front of her and smiled. Before he spoke, Luan Xiaoa was shocked again. "Junior brother, you've already become a Yu Yao?" The mana waves on Lu Ye's body were too obvious. This was undoubtedly a sign that he had become a Yu Yao. Behind him, He Baichuan appeared. He shook his head and sighed. Now that I have a new junior brother, I won't be able to see my old junior brother. Senior sister Luan, I'm a little sad. Luan Xiao was stunned. Junior brother you? How did you get here? She couldn't be blamed for being so surprised. She had followed Lu Yi from the Jade Conch Galaxy to the Wanxiang Sea. She knew how long they had spent on the journey. The last time Lu Yi left was a year ago. This amount of time was not even enough for him to return to the Jade Conch Galaxy. Therefore, Luan Xiao couldn't understand how He Baichuan could appear here. He Baichuan was even sadder now. Senior sister Luan, you don't welcome me. Should I leave? Luan Xiao glared at him. Don't joke around. He Baichuan laughed loudly. He opened his arms and walked towards Luan Xiao. It looked like he wanted to give her a hug. He said, Senior sister, I've missed you so much. Luan Xiao didn't hold back. She slapped his head, causing He Baichuan to stop. Chapter 1720. He Baichuan covered his head, looking aggrieved. Senior sister, I'm a Yu Yao after all. There are people watching. Give me some face. What face do you want? Luan Xiao seemed to be in a good mood because her junior brother had come. She turned around and looked at Ma Shangxi, who was standing behind Lu Yi. She could sense that this unfamiliar face was very powerful. He might be at the peak of the Yu Yao realm like her. Ma Shangxi stepped forward and cupped his fists. Ma Shangxi greets you. Luan Xiao did not dare to delay. She hurriedly returned the greeting. She was slightly puzzled, so she glanced at Lu Yi. Lu Yi said bluntly, he's one of us. Luan Xiao's eyes lit up. After the commotion, 2 more figures appeared. They were the Mermaid Clan's Great Elder Yen Miao and 4th Elder Cheng Exit. Lu Yi was not very familiar with the 4th Elder, but he had seen him many times. Moreover, he was the one who had helped the 4th Elder to leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea. They immediately greeted each other. Lu Yi did not see Tang Jun. He asked, Where's old Tang? Luan Xiao said, He went out to handle some matters. He'll be back soon. She did not tell Lu Yi the details. She planned to find an opportunity to tell him the details later. Lu Yi nodded. He sensed the situation on the 3-world island and raised his eyebrows. It's a high-class spiritual island now? The energy on the 3-world island was much denser than when he had left a year ago. It was obvious that it had been upgraded to a high-class spiritual island. This was slower than the unparalleled island. After all, the unparalleled island was smaller than the 3-world island in terms of size. Moreover, when Lu Yi had set up the minor constellation hall here, he had made some adjustments so that the 3-world island would not change so quickly. In a year, the 3-world island had become a high-class spiritual island. This was much faster than he had expected. It seemed that he had not made the right adjustments. It changed a month ago, Luan Xiao explained. That's right. A high-class spiritual island is qualified to attract merchants. Lu Yi was pleased. No one came to talk to you about this? Back then, Wushuang's development could be said to be extremely fast. Under Chu Shen's management, it quickly became a well-known spiritual island in the entire Wanxiang Sea. Merchants from various major forces moved in and made a lot of money in an instant. If the Heaven Flames realm had not used tricks to attack Matchless Island, Lu Yi would not have to worry about spiritual jades for cultivation. Just the dividends he received from Chu Shen every year would be enough for him to squander. Luan Xiao shook her head. Not at the moment. Lu Yi was confused. That's strange. Logically speaking, the rise of a superior spiritual island would definitely attract the attention of all the major forces. After all, such a good thing was rare even in the entire Wanxiang Sea. The earlier they entered, the greater the benefits they would receive. Disregarding everything else, there were good and bad locations for the shops in the 3-world islands business district. The sooner they got in touch with this place, the more space they would have to choose from. Luan Xiao smiled bitterly. When Tang Jun comes back, let him tell you. Old Tang knew much more about these private conflicts than she did. Lu Yi glanced at Luan Xiao and vaguely sensed something. However, she did not ask any further and said, "I've brought another 500 lunar mansions with me on this trip to Jade Conch. I'll have to trouble senior sister to arrange for them." As he spoke, he opened the door to Little Flower World and let out the 500 lunar mansions that had been placed there. Everyone appeared. Feeling the good environment around them, they were all excited. In such an environment, even without spiritual jades, they could rapidly increase their cultivation. The Wanxiang Sea was indeed a treasure. Wan Xiao became busy. She called over many cultivators from the first batch of 3 world cultivators and asked them to help the new batch settle down. Everyone had people they knew, so they gathered in groups of 3 to 5. Also, because of the hard work of the first batch of cultivators, the new batch did not need to build their own residences. There were already many empty houses on the island. They only needed to find one each. Instantly, the entire 3 world island became lively. Seeing that Luan Xiao and He Baichuan were chatting happily, Lu Yi went over to greet them. "When old Tang comes back, tell him to come find me. I'm going to rest first." Luan Xiao understood and reminded him. "Hua Si and Shui Yuan are in the pill room." Lu Yi immediately turned around and walked towards the pill room. Ma Shangxi followed closely behind. However, he had only taken a few steps when Luan Xiao suddenly shouted from behind him, "Junior brother!" Lu Yi turned around and saw Luan Xiao's panicked expression. Tang Jun sent a message. He was ambushed. Lu Ye's expression darkened. He hurriedly asked, "Location?" Luan Xiao held a musical note, clearly asking for Tang Jun's location. However, after waiting for a few breaths, there was no reply. Lu Yi immediately understood that Tang Jun's situation was not good. Otherwise, it was impossible that he did not even have the time to reply. He immediately asked, "Where did old Tang go?" Luan Xiao hurriedly replied, "He went to Wanxiang Island." Lu Yi turned his head and gave Ma Shangxi a look. Then he shot into the sky. Only his voice could be heard. "I'll go get him." Luan Xiao also knew that there was no time to waste. She hurriedly said to He Baichuan, "Come with me." Then she looked at Yen Miao and Cheng Exin. "I'll have to trouble the two of you to watch over 3 World Island." Tang Jun had been ambushed at such a critical juncture. It was clearly not a random encounter. The person who ambushed Tang Jun had most likely come prepared. Luan Xiao could not understand. Old Tang's cultivation was not very high, but he was very experienced. Moreover, he had some disguise techniques when he went to Wanxiang Island. Logically speaking, he should not have been exposed. However, Tang Jun had just sent a message to her, and now he had been ambushed. Luan Xiao could not help but shudder. After Lu Yi and his servant left, Luan Xiao and He Baichuan hurriedly left as well. A few hundred li away from 3 World Island, a figure was lying in wait. When he sensed the auras of several Yu Yaos, he frowned. He could not understand why so many Yu Yaos had suddenly appeared on 3 World Island. However, this was obviously not a good sign. He hurriedly took out a sound talisman and sent a message. At this time, Lu Ye's expression was solemn. He stood on Ma Shangxi's star boat and shook his head. "Too slow. Explode your precious blood and use blood escape." After interacting with Ma Shangxi for so long, Lu Yi naturally knew what kind of abilities he had. He had precious blood, and so did Ma Shangxi. After all, Ma Shangxi was a peak Yu Yao. However, unlike him, Ma Shangxi's precious blood could not directly transform into a clone, and it was not as powerful as Lu Ye's precious blood. If Ma Shangxi wanted to transform his precious blood into a clone, he would have to cultivate another blood race secret technique and refine a drop of precious blood for a long time. Lu Yi guessed that this had to do with the great difference in their sacred nature. The reason his precious blood could directly transform into a clone was probably because of its strong sacred nature. In terms of mastery of the blood race's secret techniques, he was much more powerful than Ma Shangxi. Although there was a difference in their precious blood, exploding it to boost the blood escape would still greatly increase the power of the blood escape. Lu Yi had no idea what Tang Jun's current situation was. However, he was only a mid-stage Yu Yao magical cultivator, and his foundation was not strong. Since the enemy had launched a sneak attack, Tang Jun's situation was definitely not good. Lu Yi had to rush over to help as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would only be able to collect old Tang's corpse. After returning this time, he could clearly feel that Wan Xiao had not told him some things. It was probably not because she wanted to hide them from him, but because she wanted to tell him in detail later. Tang Jun's sneak attack was probably related to these things. Since Lu Yi had spoken, Ma Shangxi did not hesitate at all. He immediately put away his star boat, and a drop of precious blood exploded into a blood mist that enveloped him and Lu Yi. Then he rushed forward like a flash of lightning. Wan Xiao and He Baichuan, who had followed Lu Yi and his servant out of the three-world island, immediately lost sight of them. Wan Xiao was shocked. That fellow Taoist Ma, what's his background? She could finally confirm that Ma Shangxi was indeed at the peak of the Yuyao realm, and his foundation was even stronger than hers. He Baichuan's expression was solemn. You might not believe it, but that fellow Taoist Ma claimed to be fellow Taoist Lu's servant. Servant? Wan Xiao's expression was a little chaotic. A servant at the peak of the Yuyao realm? Then what was Lu Yi's background? She suddenly realized that she did not understand Lu Yi at all. Sigh, Jade Conch also encountered a crisis some time ago. I'll tell you more about it when we have time. He Baichuan sighed. In the blood mist ahead, Lu Yi spread out his divine sense and searched for Tang Jun's whereabouts. At the same time, he kept trying to contact him with musical notes. Unfortunately, there was no reply, so he had no idea where Tang Jun was. However, since he had come from the direction of the Island of Versatility, it was not too difficult to search for him. The only good news was that the musical notes could transmit messages, which meant that Tang Jun was still alive. If he was dead, his musical notes would lose their effectiveness, and he would not be able to transmit any messages. At the same time, Lu Yi took out the star map of the Island of Versatility. He wanted to try his best to determine Tang Jun's current location. The person who had ambushed Tang Jun was definitely Yu Yao, and it was highly likely that there was more than one person. Although Tang Jun's foundation was not very strong, he was still a mid-stage cultivator. Moreover, after experiencing the invasion of the Peerless Island, he had become more cautious and bought many defensive Dharma treasures. He knew his shortcomings, so he tried his best to make up for them with spirit jades. Therefore, as long as he did not encounter an enemy that was too strong, he should be able to protect himself for a short period of time. The commotion caused by such a battle would not be small. The person who had ambushed Tang Jun would probably avoid the spiritual islands occupied by the major factions to avoid any misunderstandings. In this way, there was a screening area. Lu Yi was now afraid that Tang Jun would not return to the three-world island in a straight line. Fortunately, his worries were unfounded. After running like this for almost 2 hours, Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. There was clearly the sound of Yu Yao fighting in that direction. Over there, Lu Yi hurriedly said. Ma Shangxi immediately changed direction. After a while, Lu Yi finally saw Tang Jun's figure. When he looked over, he was filled with rage. At this moment, Tang Jun's body was protected by a dim layer of light. His entire body was covered in blood, and his face was pale. It was obvious that he was severely injured. Beside him, 2 figures were madly attacking him. One of them was a mid-stage Yu Yao, and the other was a late-stage Yu Yao. Tang Jun was in a precarious situation. Throat inflammation, fever, coughing. Most people who caught a cold had this process. Coughing was the worst. However, he had still reached this stage. Last night, he coughed so hard that he could not fall asleep until 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, he was listless and coughing non-stop. He felt like his lungs were about to explode. I have to go to the hospital to get some medicine. Chapter 1721. The commotion caused by Yu Yao's battle was huge. Many cultivators had gathered around to watch the show, and they were all pointing at the battle. Although battles occurred on the myriad phenomenon sea from time to time, battles between Yu Yao cultivators were still rare. They usually occurred during battles on the Spirit Islands. It was rare for such a thing to happen, so the cultivators were naturally happy to watch the show. there were two Yu Yao cultivators attacking Tang Jun. One was a weapon cultivator, while the other was a body cultivator. They had originally thought that this matter would be simple. After all, the two of them were working together against a mid-stage body cultivator. Furthermore, it was a sneak attack. There was no chance of failure. They had planned to end the battle quickly. Who knew that when the battle actually began, they would realize that they had underestimated the situation. Tang Jun's strength was indeed not that great. After the battle, he had no intention of retaliating. He only relied on a few defensive Dharma treasures to protect himself. It was clear that he was waiting for reinforcements. The two of them had finally broken through Tang Jun's defensive Dharma treasures with great difficulty. However, Tang Jun had actually summoned a red talisman. The two of them had never seen such a cowardly Yu Yao. They couldn't understand where Tang Jun had gotten his wealth from. Those defensive Dharma treasures were still fine. They were all 4- or 5-star Dharma treasures. Although they weren't cheap, they weren't that valuable either. The key was that red talisman. It was worth at least 2 million spirit jades. If it weren't for the red talisman's protection, how could Tang Jun, a mid-stage Yu Yao cultivator, have lasted until now? However, that was all there was to it. No matter how powerful the red talisman was, it couldn't withstand the endless attacks. The protective barrier formed by the red talisman was already extremely dim. It looked like it would shatter at any moment. The two of them were confident that they could break through the red talisman's protection and kill Tang Jun in 10 breaths' time. At this moment, the late-stage Yu Yao body cultivator suddenly raised his head. He immediately saw a cloud of red mist rapidly approaching the battlefield. His expression darkened as he said, "Someone's coming." They were very familiar with Tang Jun's strength. Moreover, after the battle, Tang Jun had only defended and not attacked. It was obvious that he was waiting for reinforcements. Thus, they had expected this situation. However, they hadn't expected that Tang Jun's reinforcements would arrive so quickly. One had to know that this place was quite a distance away from the Three-Realm Island. Under normal circumstances, if Yu Yao had rushed over from the Three-Realm Island, they wouldn't have arrived so quickly. The body cultivator sensed the red mist and sensed the red mist. The red Yu Yao was late-stage Yu Yao like him, while the other was early-stage Yu Yao cultivator. He only hesitated for a moment before making a decision. "I'll go stop them. Hurry up." As he finished speaking, he had already headed towards the red mist. After a few breaths of time, the red mist suddenly expanded, transforming into a sea of blood that enveloped the body cultivator under his astonished gaze. Within the blood sea, Lu Yi didn't stop for even a moment. He rushed out and headed in Tang Jun's direction. Although he should be able to get rid of this body cultivator very quickly if he joined forces with Ma Shangxi, the current situation was naturally to protect Tang Jun's life first. He couldn't delay any longer. The distance between them rapidly shortened. Beside Tang Jun, the mid-stage Yu Yao hesitated for a moment when she saw Lu Yi charging towards her. In the end, she chose to give up on Tang Jun and charge towards Lu Yi. At the same time, he gave Tang Jun a sinister look and threatened, "I'll kill your companions first, then I'll deal with you." Saying so, he directly went in the direction of Lu Yi. A trace of struggle flashed across Tang Jun's pale face. He was old and experienced, so he instantly understood the other party's intention in threatening him. Lu Yi was clearly trying to force him to give up on the red talisman's defensive power. He had spent a lot of money to buy this red talisman from the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce, so its defensive power was without a doubt. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to last for so long under the frenzied attacks of two Yu Yao cultivators who were stronger than him. However, this red talisman had a drawback. Once it was activated, it couldn't move. It was the same as being a sitting duck. This was why he had remained in place all this time. First, it was because of the red talisman, and second, it was because he really couldn't get away. Now that Lu Yi had come to save him, he naturally couldn't just stand by and watch as Lu Yi fell into danger. Even though he could sense that Lu Yi was a Yu Yao, it was obvious that he had only recently ascended. Perhaps he hadn't even stabilized his cultivation yet. How could he possibly have a good ending against a mid-stage Yu Yao cultivator? The other party's intention in threatening him was to force him to give up on defending and take the initiative to attack. Tang Jun's mind was clear, but in this situation he still gritted his teeth and took the initiative to disperse the red talisman's might. He was about to cooperate with Lu Yi to launch a pincer attack. However, he had only just done this when the weapon cultivator charging towards Lu Yi suddenly turned around. A sinister smile hung on his face as he swung his staff at Tang Jun's side. He knew something like this would happen, but he had no other choice. In the face of this ferocious attack, Tang Jun could only forcibly summon his almost depleted magic power and activate a spell technique to meet it. As their magic power collided, Tang Jun's spell technique collapsed. His opponent's ferocious attack came crashing down. Tang Jun cried out in alarm, and his body plummeted down like a broken kite. He was practically an arrow at the end of its flight. Although his opponent had also expended a significant amount of magic power, there was still a gap in their strength. With this collision, the victor was immediately decided. The weapon cultivator wielding the staff clearly wanted to kill him, but he no longer had the chance. When he sensed Lu Ye's aura rapidly approaching him, he could only turn around and swing his staff at him. Under the urging of his magic power, this staff swing created a huge shadow that swept across 100 miles. In his field of vision, he suddenly lost sight of Lu Ye's figure. The weapon cultivator was shocked. In the next moment, he saw Lu Yi, who had somehow appeared not far from him, raised his hand to press on the scabbard. His eyes were slightly lowered, and his expression was calm. However, the anger in his eyes was like an erupting volcano. With a clang, the Panshan saber was unsheathed, and the saber light flashed. The weapon cultivator's body suddenly stiffened. He lowered his head in shock and looked at the magic weapon in his hand. This 5-star magic weapon had been split in half from the middle. The cut was as smooth as a mirror. A look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. He really couldn't believe that his magic weapon had been cut in half from the middle. Although it wasn't a defensive magic weapon, it was still a magic weapon. Its sturdiness was obvious. It shouldn't have been as brittle as a wooden staff. His vision slowly moved and he looked at his chest. A line of blood seeped out. He suddenly felt a little flustered. Pain spread through his entire chest. The line of blood turned into a fountain of blood, and his vision began to tilt. Behind him, Lu Yi had already sheathed his saber. He grabbed Tang Jun, who had almost fallen into the 10,000 elephant sea, and asked, "How are you?" Old Tang looked like his soul had left his body. That moment of near-death experience had caused his mind to go blank. After a while, he slowly came back to his senses. "I won't die." Then he hurriedly said, "Don't worry about me. Fight the enemy first." Lu Yi let go of his arm and shook his head. "No need." Old Tang was stunned. Why wasn't there a need? However, he soon understood why. When he looked up, the figure with his back to them suddenly spurted out blood. His body was split in half and fell into the 10,000 elephant sea, falling into the endless darkness. Old Tang was dumbfounded. He had been hit by the weapon cultivator's staff until he was dizzy. He didn't see clearly what had happened, so he didn't know how this person had died. Although he didn't see the details, Tang Jun knew that this person's death couldn't be separated from Lu Yi. In a single exchange, the weak defeated the strong and killed a mid-stage moon jade cultivator? Tang Jun was shocked. "Follow me." Lu Yi used his magic power to wrap around Tang Jun and rushed toward Ma Shangxi. He had already killed one of the 2 moon jade cultivators who had ambushed Tang Jun, but he didn't plan to let the other one go. Although he didn't know what was going on, if he hadn't come quickly, Tang Jun would have been dead. Since the other party wanted to kill him, he naturally wouldn't show mercy. However, just as he moved, the blood sea on Ma Shangxi's side shook. Then a figure rushed out. It was the body cultivator. At this moment, this guy's blood was boiling. There were some injuries on his body. It was obvious that he had risked his life. After leaving the blood sea, he didn't stop at all. Instead, he used some kind of escape technique and quickly fled in a certain direction. By the time Lu Yi brought Tang Jun to meet up with Ma Shangxi, the body cultivator had already run far away. Lu Yi glanced at him and suppressed the killing intent in his heart. He didn't chase after him. At this time, there was no point in chasing after him. His cultivation was weaker than the other party, and the other party had used an escape technique. It would be difficult to catch up. The blood sea receded, revealing Ma Shangxi's figure. He looked at Lu Yi uneasily. I failed to stop him, holy senior. I deserve to die. Lu Yi shook his head. It's not your fault. Under normal circumstances, Ma Shangxi would have no problem using the blood sea technique to trap the body cultivator. However, when they were rushing over, Lu Yi made him explode his precious blood and activate the blood escape technique. This caused him to expend too much energy in a short period of time. Therefore, when he fought with the body cultivator, he wasn't at his peak condition. This gave the other party an opportunity to take advantage of him. Since he had already killed one of the other party, it wasn't a complete loss. Tang Jun stood to the side, looking at Ma Shangxi in shock. He wondered if he was hallucinating because of his injuries. Why was a late-stage moonjade cultivator so respectful to Lu Yi? Since Lu Yi killed that mid-stage moonjade cultivator with a single slash, everything seemed to be unreal. Let's go back first. Lu Yi glanced at the many onlookers and called out to them. He summoned his star boat and led Ma Shangxi and Tang Jun back the way they came. He had a lot of questions, but this wasn't the place to talk. After Lu Yi and the others left, the onlookers began to discuss fervently. After all, they had witnessed a shocking battle with their own eyes. They were both moonjade cultivators, but a mid-stage moonjade cultivator was killed by an early-stage moonjade cultivator with a single slash. Not only that, even the cultivator's weapon was cut in half. They had never even heard of such a thing before, let alone seen it. On the star boat, Lu Yi silently examined his body. The burden from the saber draw was simply too great. Even though it was just a single slash, his flesh and blood were all damaged. Fortunately, this kind of damage was nothing to Yu Yao, and she would recover very quickly. Chapter 1722. As they rushed toward the three-world island, Lu Ye's sound talisman suddenly vibrated. He checked it and found that it was a message from Luan Xiaoa, asking about the situation here. Lu Yi told her the truth. Luan Xiaoa heaved a sigh of relief. After a while, Lu Yi and the others met up with Luan Xiaoa and her junior brother. Looking at their current state, Lu Yi frowned and asked, "What's going on here?" Luan Xiaoa and He Baichuan both had injuries on their bodies. They had obviously gone through a great battle. Someone intercepted us. Luan Xiao's expression was serious. Junior brother He and I fought with them. Before I could send you a message, they suddenly retreated. Lu Yi frowned. How many people? 3. Luan Xiao replied. Moreover, the ones who could intercept them were undoubtedly Yu Yao. Lu Yi muttered to himself for a moment, then understood. Our three-world island has been targeted. On the way back from the island of versatility, Tang Jun had been ambushed by 2 Yu Yao. He had sent a message for help, but Luan Xiaoa and her junior brother had been intercepted. There were 2 Yu Yao on the other side and 3 on the other side. There were exactly 5 Yu Yao. They were obviously in cahoots. This was undoubtedly a premeditated provocation. Therefore, it was not difficult for Lu Yi to deduce that the three-world island had been targeted by a certain faction. They were prepared to attack Tang Jun first to weaken the defenses of the three-world island. If he and Ma Shangxi had not run fast enough, the 3 Yu Yao who had intercepted Luan Xiao's junior brother would have encountered them. However, Ma Shangxi had activated the blood escape technique too quickly after exploding her precious blood. The other party probably did not have time to react, which was why they had intercepted Luan Xiaoa and her junior brother. The three-world island had been promoted to a high-class spiritual island a month ago. It was not strange for such a juicy piece of meat to be targeted. Lu Yi even suspected that there was more than one faction targeting the three-world island. It was just that only one of them had made a move today. Let's go back first. Lu Yi called out and the group returned. They did not let down their guard on the way back. Who knew if a few Yu Yao would suddenly appear and ambush them? Only when they returned to the three-world island did they relax. Tang Jun cursed as he went to find Shui Yuan to treat his injuries. He had narrowly escaped death in this battle, and the price he had paid was enormous. Just the broken defensive spirit treasures and the red talisman alone were worth nearly 4 million spirit jades. It could be said that he had suffered a great loss. Although Lu Yi had killed one of the other side's members, he hadn't gained anything at all. It wasn't enough to make up for his losses. Lu Yi went to the alchemy chamber to look for Tang Jun. He was prepared to do so when he came back. However, he received the news that Tang Jun had been ambushed, so he immediately rushed to rescue him. Inside the pill room, Hua Xiai already knew that Lu Yi had returned, so she wasn't surprised to see him. She just glanced at him with a smile. "Daddy!" A small figure rushed over from the side and threw himself into Lu Ye's arms. It was Yaya. Lu Yi hugged her and raised his hand to scratch her little nose. "Are you obedient?" Yaya rolled her eyes and said crisply, "I'm very, very obedient." Lu Yi looked at Hua Xiai, and Hua Xiai nodded. "Yaya is very sensible. She didn't make a fuss when you weren't around." "That's a good girl." Lu Yi pinched her pink little face. Yaya giggled. "How is Elder Tang?" Hua Xiai asked. Lu Yi sat to the side with Yaya in his arms and said, "He's injured. It's not a big deal. Second sister is treating him." Yaya leaned forward and poured a cup of water for Lu Yi from the teapot next to her. She handed it to him and said obediently, "Daddy, have some tea." Lu Yi gladly picked it up. Just as he started to drink, Yaya asked, "Where's my mother?" Lu Yi spat out a mouthful of tea and hurriedly explained, "Ah, your mother? She went back to her mother's house." Hua Xiai chuckled at the side and said meaningfully. Lu Yi suddenly felt a headache coming on. Yaya tapped her little mouth and thought seriously for a while, looking a little disappointed. "She'll be back in a while." Lu Yi comforted her. He sighed in his heart. He also knew that Yaya was not really a child, but he didn't know why she became like this. Coupled with her damaged mind, she always acted like a child. But Yaya kept calling him daddy, and it made Lu Ye's shoulders feel heavy. In the past, he was afraid that Yaya would one day recover her mind and recall the experience during this period. If that happened, he would be in a bad situation. But now he didn't think so. He even hoped that Yaya could recover. In any case, it was too sad that Rizhao had fallen to such a state. You may have thought too simply about the situation in the Wanxiang Sea. Now that you're back, you should communicate more with Elder Tang and the others. There were actually signs that Elder Tang was attacked. Hua Xi's voice sounded. "What do you know?" Lu Yi asked. Hua Xiai shook her head. "Second sister and I are in charge of the alchemy room. We only heard a few words about what happened outside. We don't know much, so I won't mislead you." Lu Yi nodded. After chatting with Hua Xiai for a while in the alchemy room, Lu Yi received Luan Xiao's message and left. In the Three World Islands meeting hall, the Yu Yao were gathered. In the Jade Snail Galaxy, there were Luan Xiao, He Baichuan, Tang Jun, and Lu Yi. In the Mermaid Clan, there was Great Elder Yen Miao and Fourth Elder Cheng Exin. There was also Blood Warden Ma Shangxi. In the entire Three World Island, there were now as many as 7 Yu Yao. Compared to when they first arrived, their strength had greatly increased. Luan Xiao, Yen Miao, and Ma Shangxi were all at the peak of Yu Yao, while He Baichuan and Cheng Xian were at the late stage of Yu Yao. With such a lineup and 1,000 lunar mansions, the Three World Islands' defense could be said to be at its initial stage. For any force, this speed of development was unimaginable. After all, the Three World Islands cultivators had only arrived at the Wanxiang Sea a year ago. Of course, due to the rules of the Wanxiang Sea, the 7 Yu Yao were not allowed to fight together in a battle for Soul Island. Otherwise, it would be a provocation to the local galaxy. Rizhao, who was in charge of the Wanxiang Island, would not sit by and watch. After Shui Yuan's treatment, Tang Jun's injuries were no longer serious, but he still looked a little weak. After everyone took their seats, Lu Yi was the first to speak. Which force attacked the Three World Island today? Everyone was silent. Clearly no one knew. Luan Xiao's expression was a little awkward. She explained, "We've only been here for a short time, so we don't know much about the Yu Yao of the major forces. However, To be able to mobilize 5 Yu Yao at once, and each of them is quite powerful, it's definitely not a small force. For more than a year, the three-world island had been working hard to develop itself. There were many major forces on the Wanxiang Sea. The three-world island did not have many connections, so they could not determine which force attacked them. Moreover, the other party was hiding in the dark. Therefore, the situation here was a little uncomfortable. They did not even know who to look for revenge. Lu Yi tapped her fingers on the table. She suddenly looked at Tang Jun. "Old Tang, why did you go to the Wanxiang Island today?" Tang Jun replied, "To visit a mountain." "Visit a mountain?" Lu Yi frowned, looking confused. "What mountain?" Tang Jun said helplessly, "You only focus on cultivation. Of course you don't understand the many hidden complications in the Wanxiang Sea." "Then tell me." Lu Yi sat up straight and assumed a listening posture. Tang Jun thought for a moment and asked, "You should know that Ri Zhao is overseeing the Wanxiang Island, right?" "I know that." Lu Yi nodded. No matter how ignorant and inexperienced he was, he had heard of this common knowledge. Moreover, he knew that there was more than one Ri Zhao overseeing the Wanxiang Island. Ri Zhao oversees the Wanxiang Sea for two reasons. First, it's to deter, and second, it's also to manage the Wanxiang Sea. If any force breaks the rules, Ri Zhao will have to step in and take care of it. Under normal circumstances, Ri Zhao's experts are too lazy to care about these trivial matters. They are too high level and have their own goals. Why would they waste their time on such trivial matters? However, in reality, there is a lot of competition in the local galaxies for the job of overseeing the Wanxiang Sea. What do you mean? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Of course there are benefits. Great benefits. Tang Jun looked at him. In the current Wanxiang Sea, on the surface, there is only one top-grade spiritual island in the local galaxy. However, in reality, almost every top-grade spiritual island and even upper-grade spiritual island are inextricably linked to Ri Zhao from the local galaxy. Those top-grade spiritual islands and upper-grade spiritual islands all have Ri Zhao's shadow behind them. Lu Yi frowned. "You're confusing me." Tang Jun said, "It's very simple. Let's not talk about the low-grade and middle-grade spiritual islands. Ri Zhao doesn't care about those places. However, it's different for upper-grade spiritual islands. For example, our three-world island has a great cultivation environment. If you come here, your cultivation efficiency will increase greatly. Ri Zhao doesn't need such a cultivation environment. However, which Ri Zhao doesn't need to take care of his juniors and disciples. These people need a great cultivation environment. There are many cultivators in the local Wanxiang star system. One Wanxiang island is not enough to satisfy them. Therefore, other top-grade spiritual islands and upper-grade spiritual islands are their choice." After a pause, Tang Jun continued, "They won't attack and occupy these spiritual islands because they want to save face. Moreover, they are the ones who set the rules. Naturally, they won't break it themselves. Therefore, they need the people in charge of these spiritual islands to be tactful enough to visit them." Lu Yi somewhat understood. Simply put, they need to rely on a certain Ri Zhao. Then, this Ri Zhao will arrange for some people to go to those spiritual islands to cultivate? Tang Jun nodded. "That's right. This is an unwritten rule that has been passed down since ancient times in the Wanxiang Sea. The local Wanxiang star system also uses this method to place their own cultivators on the spiritual islands. Of course, these cultivators won't gain much from the spiritual islands. They only occupy a few spots and have a better cultivation environment." As he spoke, Tang Jun raised his hand and knocked on the table. "This is the so-called visiting of a mountain. The spiritual islands and a certain Ri Zhao will reach some kind of agreement. Then, at certain times, they will be taken care of to a certain extent." Chapter 1723. Lu Yi did not know about this. Although Unparalleled Island had developed from a small island to a top-class spiritual island, Chu Shen was the one who handled all these matters. Lu Yi did not participate at all, and Chu Shen did not mention it to him. Moreover, from another perspective, Chu Shen himself was an all-creation cultivator, And he also had Juyen behind him. There was no need for him to worship any powerful cultivator. Juyen was his greatest backer, which was why Peerless Island had been able to develop so quickly and smoothly. If Unparalleled Island had remained a top-class spiritual island, nothing would have happened. However, Unparalleled Island had become a top-class spiritual island and produced a spirit jade mine. Things had become complicated. The Wanxiang Galaxy wanted to take control of Unparalleled Island directly, but Chu Xin did not agree. Perhaps there was some communication between Ri Zhao and Jiao Yan, but Ri Zhao was adamant about controlling Unparalleled Island. In the end, Unparalleled Island was forcefully occupied and Chu Xin retreated to Che Lingjia. On the surface, Matchless Island was managed by the Heaven Flame Chamber of Commerce, but in reality, it was still the property of the local star system. There was no doubt about this. Even the Che Ling sector, who had been forced to leave Matchless Island, could still benefit from it. Only Lu Yi and Tang Jun were completely kicked out. The three-world island situation was different from Unparalleled Island. However, the same thing was that the transformation of the spiritual islands had led to certain developments. If the three-world island was still a middle-class spiritual island, there would be no need to seek help. Ri Zhao did not care about middle-class spiritual islands. However, a month ago, the three-world island transformed into a top-class spiritual island. While it brought great benefits to the three-world island, it also brought some hidden dangers. The Jade Conch Galaxy was not a large galaxy. It did not have any powerful cultivators. In a complicated environment like the Wanxiang Sea, the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators were a group of people without much backing. Under such circumstances, it would be very difficult to establish a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea without anyone to take care of them. Other things aside, this fat piece of meat would definitely be coveted by many forces. When the time came, the three-world island would be in constant war. How could the cultivators cultivate in peace? Hence, since a month ago, Tang Jun had been dealing with this matter. He had the experience of managing a spiritual island with Chu Xin. Hence, he was much clearer than Lu Yi about this. He knew that if the three-world island wanted stability after transforming into a superior spiritual island, it had to seek the protection of Ri Guang and submit to him. Although they would have to give up some benefits, it would be worth it as long as they could stabilize. Since he was living in someone else's territory, he naturally had to follow their rules. For countless years, the Wanxiang Galaxy cultivators used this method to arrange their cultivators to cultivate spiritual islands, to ensure their cultivators' strength quickly. Therefore, although the Wanxiang Galaxy only controlled the Wanxiang Island in the Wanxiang Sea on the surface, it was content. The Wanxiang Island could bring a huge amount of wealth to the local galaxy, and the various spirit islands could provide ample places for their cultivators to cultivate. The two complemented each other, and it was enough to ensure the prosperity of the local galaxy. Junior brother, didn't you ask me if there were any merchants who wanted to talk about accommodation? Luan Xiao looked at Lu Yi. Before the situation on the three-world island stabilizes, the merchants from the various factions won't easily negotiate with us. In their eyes, the ones who will occupy the island in the end won't necessarily be us. So, it's pointless to negotiate. Only when the situation on the three-world island is completely stabilized can the following matters be pushed forward. Lu Yi nodded. If he were one of those merchants, he would probably have the same idea. They would wait and see. It wouldn't be too late to talk about it after everything was settled. This was completely different from the development of the Peerless Island. Chu Xin had contributed a lot to the development of the Peerless Island. He had personally negotiated with the merchants from the major forces. Naturally, he had brought a lot of prosperity. In the eyes of outsiders, the three-world islands foundation was not strong enough to protect this top-class spiritual island. They would be driven out by some force sooner or later. Lu Yi said, "So, old Tang went to the Wanxiang Island to find Ri Zhao. Who is he?" Tang Jun said, "A Ri Zhao called Yuan Du." Pausing for a moment, he explained, "Initially, there were only 3 Nichokas in charge of the Vientiane Island. However, ever since someone infiltrated the Vientiane Island and killed one of them, the local star system sent another 3 Nichokas. Now, there are 5 Nichokas in the Vientiane Island. Ma Bin's figure appeared in Lu Ye's mind. Speaking of which, he hadn't heard any news about him since the last time they parted. He didn't know where this Jiuzhou expert was now. Yuan Du was one of the 3 Rizhao that was added later. The reason why Tang Jun chose this person as his backer was because Rizhao was the only person that Tang Jun could contact indirectly. Secondly, the number of spiritual islands under the 3 new Rizhao was fewer. Hence, if the 3-world island expressed their sincerity, they would be easily accepted. The other 2 Rizhao had been in the Wanxiang Sea for too long. They had connections with many spiritual islands. They were already full. Naturally, they couldn't fight with the 3 new arrivals. What happened? Lu Yi asked, "What did you talk about with Rizhao when you went to visit the Wanxiang Island?" Tang Jun smiled bitterly. "We didn't talk about anything. I didn't even see him. I was sent back by a little brat in his palace." Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. Luan Xiao aside, it seems that Yuan Du doesn't think highly of us. If he really thought highly of the 3-world island, he wouldn't have ignored Tang Jun when he went to visit the Wanxiang Island. Yuan Du's attitude was clear. He didn't think highly of the 3-world island. He felt that the 3-world island would change hands sooner or later. So, he didn't even bother to meet Tang Jun and take care of him. If he really did that, would he have to step in when the 3-world island was attacked? It wasn't worth it to get into trouble. You need to be strong to forge iron. Although He Baichuan was new here, he had lived for so many years. He understood the complexity of human nature very well. It was a pity that the 3-world island had no way to visit the Wanxiang Island before they could protect themselves. Lu Yi blinked his eyes and asked, "Old Tang, were you followed when you left the island of versatility?" Tang Jun was startled. He shook his head and said, "I did disguise myself when I left the island of versatility. I didn't notice anyone following me." Lu Yi let out a hollow laugh. "That's interesting. You've already disguised yourself. Besides, there are so many people going in and out of the island of versatility every day, yet the person who ambushed you was still able to track you down." Tang Jun lowered his gaze. His eyes were filled with anger and frustration. He had obviously thought of something too. Luan Xiao finally realized something. "Junior brother, you mean," Lu Yi said, "it's obvious. Someone must have sent a message to the person who ambushed old Tang. As for who it was obvious. From the looks of it, Yuan Du refused to see Tang Jun not only because he didn't think highly of the cultivators of the 3 realms, but also because someone had already pledged allegiance to him and reached some sort of agreement with him in secret. Yuan Du had only released a little bit of information, and old Tang had almost met with disaster. Old Tang went to visit the Wanxiang Island of his own accord. If he hadn't spent a lot of money to buy a bunch of life-saving items, and if Lu Yi hadn't come to his rescue in time, Tang Jun would have been dead. "Are the Great Elder and 4th Elder in the open or in the dark?" Lu Yi asked again. "They've been in the open for a long time." Luan Xiao aside, "The 3-world island has been through a few battles while you were away. In the 10,000 Elephant Sea, a middle-grade spirit island was enough to tempt many factions. Therefore, while Lu Yi was not around, 3 factions had set their sights on the 3-world island. Some were strong and some were weak. Although Luan Xiao was at the peak of Yu Yao, Tang Jun's strength was not enough. Therefore, she could only ask for help from the Mermaid clan. Now that Great Elder Yen Miao and 4th Elder Cheng Exin were out in the open, the 3-world island was safe and sound with their help. "Have you gone to register?" Lu Yi asked. Lu Yi didn't know anything about the Wanxiang Island's visit. However, there were some things he knew, such as the registration. There were many Yu Yaos on the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. Any faction that could establish a foothold on the Myriad Phenomenon Sea couldn't possibly only have 5 Yu Yaos. Take Jade Conch for example. The Wu Zhua and Cho Wu came here one day. They couldn't possibly not enter the 3-world island just because a faction could only have 5 Yu Yaos. In fact, they could enter the 3-world island and even stay there. However, if they encountered a battle for the Spirit Island, they wouldn't be able to interfere. They could only watch helplessly. This involved the issue of registration. Only Yu Yao, who had been registered, could participate in the battle for the spiritual island. Therefore, the rule that a faction could only have 5 Yuyao referred to the number of registered Yuyao. This was managed by the Wanxiang Galaxy. The Wanxiang Island had a specialized organization in charge of this. Since Yen Miao and Cheng Exen could participate in the battle for the Spirit Island, it meant that they had gone to register. They were now Yuyao of the Three-World Island. Generally speaking, only Yuyao cultivators needed to register. Constellations didn't need to. However, Lu Yi had experienced this before. This was because his identity was the third island master of the Three-World Island. He was different from ordinary constellations. Back then, he had gone to register with Wan Xiaoa and Tang Jun. That was how he knew about this. The Great Elder and the Fourth Elder are out in the open. Therefore, the enemy knows that there are 4 Yuyao in the Three-World Island. Their arrangements are very obvious. This time, 2 of them ambushed Old Tang. Old Tang would definitely send a message back. Under normal circumstances, Senior Sister Luan would definitely go to rescue him. Moreover, they have 3 people outside to intercept them. No matter which side succeeds, it will be a huge loss for the Three-World Island. Once one of the Yuyao is killed, their next step would be to attack the Three-World Island. Lu Yi said. Wan Xiaoa felt a lingering fear when she heard this. This was because if things were as Lu Yi had guessed, Old Tang wasn't the only one in danger. Even she was in danger. Chapter 1724. The enemies who had set their sights on Three-World Island had made 2 plans. They thought that Tang Jun would definitely die in this sneak attack. However, if they could use Tang Jun's request for help and get rid of Wan Xiaoa, it would save them a lot of trouble when they attacked Three-World Island. However, they didn't expect Lu Yi to come back at this critical moment. He even brought Ma Shangxi and He Baichuan with him. This caused a huge flaw in their plan. After receiving Tang Jun's message, Lu Yi and Ma Shangxi immediately went to help. They left so quickly that the 3 enemies lying in ambush couldn't stop them in time. They could only block Wan Xiaoa and He Baichuan. 3 against 2, they had the advantage in numbers. However, Wan Xiaoa was a peak Yuyao while He Baichuan was a late Yuyao. Their advantage in numbers was not enough to secure victory. After the sneak attack on Tang Jun's side failed and one of the Yuyao was killed, the 3 people fighting with Wan Xiaoa and He Baichuan left quickly. Their plan had failed and there was no point in continuing the fight. The situation was clear. In the meeting hall, everyone was silent. After a while, Lu Yi said, "We don't have to think about Yuan Du anymore. That old thing is unreliable. Since he likes to cause trouble in the dark, let's ignore him." Lu Yi was a little annoyed. When Three-World Island went to visit, they had taken the initiative to give benefits to them. It was fine if they didn't accept it, but they still caused trouble in the dark. If they weren't strong enough now, Lu Yi would have imitated Ma Bin. He would remember this for now. He didn't have the ability to take revenge now. He would think about it in the future. Besides Yuan Du, how much do you know about the other 2 Rizhao? Lu Yi asked Tang Jun. Although Lu Yi didn't want to go to the mountain and share the benefits of his family for no reason, the general trend was irresistible. If it could reduce a lot of trouble because of this, he could reluctantly accept it. It was not good to be too weak, but it was also not good to be too strong. There were some things and some rules that had to be compromised. He didn't ask about the other 2 Rizhao. Since they were full, they probably wouldn't accept any more invitations from Soul Island. They had to leave some benefits for the 3 newcomers. Tang Jun said, "It's very difficult to meet Nicho. I chose Yuan Du mainly because I have a way to contact him. Even so, it took me almost a month to get in touch with him. As for the other 2, one of them is from the Tianyan realm." Tianyan realm was very strong, much stronger than Che Ling realm. Otherwise, this realm would not have occupied Wushuang Island on the surface. Of course, the current Matchless Island was completely desolate. After Lu Yi took away the minor constellation hall, the situation of Matchless Island deteriorated day by day. Today, it was almost going to become a deserted island again. The cultivators from Tianyan Field were the ones who had attacked Unparalleled Island, so Old Tang didn't like them at all. What about the other one? When Lu Yi heard that he was from the Tianyan realm, he immediately gave up on the idea of visiting him. As for the other one, I'll try to find a way to contact him. Tang Jun said. Among everyone present, he undoubtedly had the most connections in the Wanxiang Sea. This was because when he had helped Chu Shen manage Wushuang Island, he had met many people. However, this kind of connection was actually very fragile. Back then, they had warmly interacted with him because he was the steward of the unparalleled island. Otherwise, who among the Yu Yao of the major factions would spare a glance for an old Yu Yao with no future prospects? Tang Jun wasn't sure if he would be able to contact him. Moreover, Yuan Du must have taken a liking to Wushuang Island. Otherwise, he wouldn't have leaked information to others and done some secret collusion. With Yuan Du's position here, the third Nicho might not be willing to pay attention to the three-world island. It wasn't worth it to offend the other Nicho of this galaxy for a few cultivation spots on a top-class spirit island. It's better to rely on yourself than on others. Lu Yi said earnestly. So we still have to have a strong enough foundation, especially in a place like the Wanxiang Sea. If we aren't strong enough, others can't help us even if they want to. What happened to Wushuang Island was the best example. If Wushuang Island was strong enough back then and could defend itself, it wouldn't have been attacked by force. If we want to become strong, we have to cultivate hard and have enough cultivation resources. Our three-world island now has thousands of lunar mansions, and we have enough Yu Yaos. We don't have to worry about our defenses. Our future development is the most important. So the first thing we need to solve is the problem of spirit jades for the cultivators of the three-world island. Other people aside, when he cultivated himself, he needed a lot of spirit jades to buy fire-type resources for his talent tree to devour. The pills produced by the alchemy room can satisfy some people's cultivation needs. We now have a long-term and stable cooperation with the mermaid clan, Luan Xiao said. Lu Yi said, this is not a long-term solution. We still need more and more stable sources of spirit jades. Selling the pills produced by the alchemy room to the mermaid clan could indeed satisfy some cultivators' cultivation needs. However, Lu Yi had brought 500 lunar mansions with him this time, so it definitely couldn't satisfy their needs. So there was only one way to solve this problem. Develop the three-world island. Attract businesses to move in. When the time came, just the annual rent alone would be an extremely huge figure. However, the current situation of the three-world island was a little awkward. Everyone felt that the cultivators of the three-world island would not be able to gain a firm foothold. So even though they had already planned out a trade zone, no business took the initiative to come and negotiate. Old Tang. Lu Yi turned to look at him. Think of a way to find out who ambushed you. We can't just be passive. We have to take the initiative to attack. Leave it to me. Tang Jun nodded. He had been ambushed and almost died. He had a belly full of anger. Since Lu Yi had this idea, he naturally had to cooperate. If the three-world island wanted to change the minds of the businesses, then they had to display their strength. They had to find the faction that had ambushed them and counterattack. It was revenge, but also a way to display their strength. On the surface, Luan Xiao was the first island master of the three-world island, while Lu Yi was only the third island master. Moreover, Luan Xiao's cultivation level was much higher than Lu Yi's. However, whether it was Luan Xiao or the others, they all trusted Lu Yi. Luan Xiao had seen too many incredible things from Lu Yi on the way from Jade Snail to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. She always felt that this young man would definitely achieve great things in the future. Therefore, she had no intention of objecting to Lu Yi's decision. She would only cooperate fully. Moreover, she also had the same idea. Lu Yi turned to look at Yen Miao and Cheng Exin. I'll have to trouble the two elders during this time. Yen Miao smiled. You don't have to be so courteous with us. Just say the word and we'll do our best to help you. It was all thanks to Lu Yi that they were able to leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Now that they were free from the bloodline curse and had the help of supreme-grade spirit-refining pills, Yen Miao even felt that she had a chance of peeking into the secrets of the sun. They were both indebted to each other. It could be said that the mermaid clan was already tied to Lu Yi. Yen Miao was not being polite. She really meant it. Lu Yi nodded. Alright. He then looked at He Baichuan and Ma Shangxi. Rest for a while. I'll bring you to the 10,000 Elephant Island to register. Previously, the three-world island did not have enough Yu Yao, so Yen Miao and Cheng Xen had to register as well. Now that the three-world island had enough Yu Yao, there was no need to trouble the two of them. After all, if a battle really broke out on the spiritual island with another force, it would not be good to send the two elders to fight when they had people on their side. However, considering that Tang Jun's strength was indeed a little weak compared to the Yu Yao, Lu Yi felt that it would be better to replace him. This way, although one of the elders and old Tang would not be able to participate in the battle on the spiritual island, it would not be a problem for them to fight at other times. Moreover, old Tang would not be idle either. He had a wider network than the others. When the time came to develop the three-world island, he would be needed. The rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea were a general direction. There were many loopholes, but as long as there were no problems with this general direction, the local star system would be able to manage the various forces in the 10,000 Elephant Sea well. There would not be too much trouble. A meeting was held to determine the development strategy of the three-world island for the next period of time. The news was passed down through the upper echelons. Many of the constellations were mobilized. During this period of time, the constellations were actually very oppressed. When they had just arrived at the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they could still travel around in groups. However, as the three-world island gradually rose, they could not casually show their faces outside. Firstly, no one knew when an enemy would attack. Hence, they had to be prepared for battle at all times. Secondly, if they encountered a situation similar to Tang Jun's, the constellations would be in danger outside. Hence, ever since the end of the first battle, the constellations of the three-world island had been guarding the island and cultivating in peace. The three-world island was now a high-class spiritual island. Its cultivation environment was extremely good. With the support of spiritual jades, the efficiency of cultivation would be much faster than normal. This was especially so for the cultivators of the 9 states. In the past year, they could clearly feel their own improvement. The constellations of the 9 states were completely different from the other constellations. Many of them had accumulated too much power in the Divine Sea realm. In the past, the environment of the 9 states was not good, so their cultivation progress was not fast. However, as long as they had sufficient cultivation resources, their cultivation speed would definitely surpass that of the cultivators of the other realms. Currently, the constellations of the 9 states were still in the early stages. However, a few of them were already showing signs of breaking through. This was undoubtedly a good start. One day, the 9 states would definitely produce a large number of Yueyao and Sunshine. The increase in the level of cultivators would also bring about earth-shattering changes to the 9 states. Especially now that the 9 states had the World King Flower attached to it. It could be said that the future of the 9 states was bright. However, it needed time to accumulate. More importantly, it needed everyone to work together to overcome the difficulties before them. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.